Members of the Council, ladies and gentlemen, honoured guests, please be upstanding for the Worshipful, the Mayor of Kirklees, Councillor Cahal Burke.
Yeah. Good evening, members. Welcome to this evening's meeting. I hope we have a good, productive meeting. This meeting obviously is for all of us to try and get through as much of the agenda as we can and be as effective and as efficient as we can. And I hope you'll be courteous to other members when they're speaking, and then we'll get through in a good manner. Item 1 of the agenda, announcements by the Mayor and Chief Executive. I would like to first of all start by presenting Councillor Masood Ahmed with a commemorative yearbook from his mayoral year. If Councillor Ahmed would like to come forward. This is one, yeah? I didn't want you stretching up there. So it was just there. I thought we could come back to the same. No, congratulations. Yeah, I was half tempted to keep walking when I went out there, but I thought, how long you'll wait. The other announcement from me is to let you know that there will be a break in the meeting at approximately 7 p.m. Any announcements by Chief Executive? No? Okay, apologies for absence, please. Councillor Sokal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apology from Councillor Gwen Low, Councillor Jackie Ramje, Councillor Yusra Hussain, Councillor Will Simpson, and two Councillor Parvez and Councillor Amin. They're coming a bit late. Yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sokal. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies received from Councillor Holmes, Councillor Stephen, Councillor Bamford, Councillor Smith, Councillor Lees Hamilton and Councillor Donald Firth.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just received apologies from Councillor Kath Pinnock. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Munro. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the meeting of Annual Council held on the 24th of May 2023 be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Dunn. Please vote by a show of hands, please. Thank you. That is carried. Item 4, declarations of interest. Members who have any disclosable pecuniary interests which will prevent them from discussing or voting on any item should disclose their interests now. Are there any interests to declare? If there are, as we go through the agenda, please fill out the relevant appropriate paperwork. Thank you. Item 5, petitions from members of the Council. Are there any petitions from members of the Council? No. Item 6, deputations and petitions from members of the public. We have 3 deputations this evening. The first one, can I please invite Jez Walsh on behalf of Platform 1 to present his deputation.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jez Walsh from Platform 1. I'm with my colleague here, Bridget Fahy, who's our crisis lead.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I'll just remind you, so welcome to the meeting. You have 5 minutes to present your meeting to Council. Thank you.
Okay, right. Access to mental health. Platform 1 is a mental health crisis service which works throughout Kirklees. We started as a men's support group, has now changed into a qualified mental health service. We would like to discuss our concern about people's access to the mental health service. This is not an attack on the people who work within the service. This is an attack on the service and how people can access the service. We're seeing more and more people have fallen through the cracks for multiple of reasons. We encounter more and more people who receive an assessment only to be referred to another service. The biggest complaint we receive from people is that they have passed from service to service without any help being offered to them. The other issue people tell us is they are actually getting to a service itself only to be told that there is only one service in each town. We are also dealing with more and more serious cases where people have made attempts on their own lives, self-harmed, or find it impossible to function on a day-to-day basis. Mental health cannot be dealt with in isolation. It is not usually one issue that causes a problem, but a multiple of issues. This needs to be addressed. If you are going to change the way that people feel, the lack of funding, isolation and lack of access is creating problems that can lead to major issues. We have proposed for a long time that we need more access out in the community. We started a drop-in service using free and vacant local spaces to deliver drop-in services. It became very popular. However, we were unable to carry on this service due to lack of funding, even though this is a very cost-effective approach to this problem. It not only helps to tackle the isolation problem when people don't have access to help in their own community, but it also gives them the confidence to attend a service and also ask for help when it's needed in their own environment. We're also working within schools. This is to create early intervention and to identify the need for the help, which could stop children and wider family in the community from having a life of issues. Both these proposals are being fully costed and developed. Both would make a huge difference to both the community, but also to the statutory services, helping to alleviate the pressure upon them. And my colleague would just like to add a little bit further on to that.
Hi, everybody. Although we are a counselling service, we are being faced with more and more people presenting in crisis. They've either been through statutory services and discharged too early, or they've been told that they've got too many issues for them to support them and have been redirected to us. This lack of validation or victim blaming of individuals for their difficulties is how they then arrive at our door. Mistrust, lack of self-confidence and esteem, suicidal ideation, low self-worth are the main things that we deal with when people come to us in crisis before we can even begin to get to the core of their mental health difficulties through counselling. In January this year, for the first time ever, we had to put a pause on our referrals and we ended up with an 8-month waiting list. This is predominantly because 70% of our referrals originated from Folly Hall or IAPT, the Huddersfield Mental Health Service. None of these referrals were for people who they had assessed as having mild depression or anxiety, but were instead for those with psychosis, schizophrenia, multiple mental health difficulties, recent suicide attempts or ongoing suicidal ideation, the tough end of mental health. Our clients are not numbers on a page or an outcome to be ticked. They are real people who are struggling in their daily life. Real people who are lost and feel unseen. Real people who just need someone to listen, support and not judge. Real people who are part of our community. As an organisation, we ask ourselves, why have we now become a blue light service? We didn't set out to do that, but we now find ourselves filling the gap in our community on a daily basis. Why are statutory services depending on third sector charities to do the work that they are being paid for? Why is funding not given to people who are actually doing the work? We are working with 70 to 100 people every week through our crisis and counselling services. But we do know that they are only the people that are able to reach out to us. There are many more people in our community that face barriers that prevent them from reaching out. We would like your support to help us to overcome these barriers at Platform 1 by us reaching out to them through outreach services in areas of most need throughout Kirklees. This information is a lot for everybody to take in within 5 minutes, and we welcome anybody that would like to come down and speak further with us and see exactly what we do. If anybody here doesn't agree with our experiences and that of our clients on the mental health services currently available, please also get in touch with us for a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to invite Councillor Khan to respond, please.
Thank you very much for coming today and sharing your plea with us. In terms of statutory NHS services, we've been working with them in partnership for a number of years to improve access. But as a council, we have invested millions in the last few years, and we've increased that investment in the third sector. And I believe yourselves, commissioners from Public Health, have been working with you since 2018, advising, when we're happy to meet again to discuss other opportunities as well. We're very lucky in Kirklees to have a range of different types of mental health services in the communities, offering things like cafe drop-ins, activities and social contact. So if you leave your details, we'll get in touch. And it was good to see you the other weekend as well. And even though our chat was brief, we can continue that conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. And thank you, Jez and representatives from Platform 1 for being here this evening. Deputation number 2, can I please invite David Minnick on behalf of Cleckheaton Folk Festival to present his deputation. Evening, David. You have 5 minutes to present your deputation.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for allowing our organisation to be represented today. I'm Dave Minnick, the Festival Director of Cleckheaton Folk Festival, which is a nationally acclaimed festival taking place annually on the first weekend in July in our town, Cleckheaton. Our deputation concerns the upkeep of our town hall and the repair of the ceiling currently above the stage area, but we are told that surveys still need to be done to ascertain any further issues with the ceiling above the main hall. I'm sure you are aware of the importance that Cleckheaton Town Hall has for the community and people of Cleckheaton and the surrounding area. A petition was raised a couple of weeks ago and has hundreds of local signatures and beyond. The Folk Festival community has also signed where possible, because Cleckheaton and the festival has a place in the hearts of people on a national and indeed an international level. It's the one weekend in the Cleckheaton calendar that brings visitors into the town from the length and breadth of the UK in the hope of enjoying a top-class artist lineup in a top-class venue. Each year, we book world-class artists in accordance with the vision in the Kirklees music policy, and the town hall is the only suitable venue. These are the artists that attract our paying audience, which allows us to fund everything else, including a wealth of free events for the local community. The Creative Economy team commissioned surveys in 2007 and 2018 that showed how big the impact of the festival is on the town's economy. In 2018, a third of our visitors travelled over 50 miles to attend, with a further 46% travelling more than 10 miles. These people spend money in our businesses, and the 2018 survey estimated the economic impact of the festival was an additional spend in the town of over £400,000. COVID robbed us of 2 festivals, and we hope that when the festival returns in 2022, it will be business as usual, as it has been for 34 years. However, the inability to use the town hall took away the opportunity in 2023, and unless the surveys and works are expedited with speed, 2004 and the whole future of this much-loved event hangs in the balance. Suggestions to move it to other venues, as we have had to do with our commitment to Kirklees Year of Music 2023, would not work for our community and visitors. It is Cleckheaton Folk Festival and needs the Cleckheaton Town Hall in order to be the attraction that Cleckheaton and its community needs. The issues were identified in July 2022, and it's staggering that it will have taken 15 months before the full extent of the damage has even been identified. Rumours are currently circulating that the council want to close the town hall forever, so I'm sure you would like to join me in dispelling these rumours by fully identifying the issues and putting a realistic timescale and schedule of the works for repair. Cleckheaton Town Hall is a beautiful building, used by many sections of our local community and beyond, but it is in need of some tender love and care so that it can be enjoyed by many for many years to come. Thank you again for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Minnick. Can I invite Councillor Turner to respond, please?
Yeah.
Petition number 3. Can I please invite Janet Foggin on behalf of Cleckheaton and Spinborough Amateur Operatic and Dramatic Society to present her petition. Welcome to the meeting. You have 5 minutes to present your deputation to Council.
Mr Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, I represent the members of Cleckheaton and Spinborough Amateur Operatic and Dramatic Society, which is a registered charity. I have come to this council meeting to ask the council about the current closure of our town hall in Cleckheaton. The town hall has been closed to our society since October 2022. We had a show booked for November 22, which had to be moved to Batley Town Hall. Our society was given last-minute information from Kirklees Council that we were unable to put the show on, and this would have to be moved to Batley Town Hall. This move cost the society thousands of pounds, of which very little was able to be claimed back. We were told loss of ticket sales did not count for compensation. Cleckheaton Town Hall is pivotal to our town, to the community and the pride in which we say, I come from Cleckheaton. As a society, we are proud to perform shows in our hometown, to entertain and serve our community. Having shows in our town hall brings business to our town and helps it thrive. The society has also been able to support local and national charities by doing this. Our youth society has recently had to cope with huge disappointment and upheaval. Obviously, we knew we wouldn't be able to put on this year's show in Cleckheaton, so we had to book Batley Town Hall again. And then 3 weeks before being on stage, we were told there was a problem at Batley Town Hall. In the end, we have had to postpone this show to September, and this will be held at Dewsbury Town Hall. Again, with a lot of hard work from committee members and parents. The council need to repair Cleckheaton Town Hall urgently. Otherwise, societies such as ours will fail to retain our committed supporters, and in turn will have a devastating effect on our town and on Kirklees in general. The Society support our local councillors in their endeavours to reopen Cleckheaton Town Hall, and in return we hope that the full council will recognise this and come to the only decision in repairing the problem and bringing us back home. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janet. I invite Councillor Turner to respond to both deputations 2 and 3.
Thank you. David and members of Spenber Operatic and Dramatic Society, thank you very much for coming along this evening and giving us your presentation. I understand fully the frustration of Cleckheaton Folk Festival and Spenber Amateur Operatic Society as we are unable to provide the timescales for the repair of Cleckheaton Town Hall. This means you cannot plan next year's programme. Unfortunately, it isn't possible to clarify the timescales and implications for the works required until a full survey has been undertaken, as we do not yet know the full extent of the works required. In relation to the ceiling in the main hall, the investigation above the stage area found some minor movement of supporting beams and significant issues with the lath and plaster ceiling, which has a small collapse. This has led to scaffolding being erected on the stage, taking it fully out of action. This has also meant that we need to undertake further investigative works across the whole of the town hall to check the stability of the ceilings. As a well-loved listed building, repairs to Cleckheaton Town Hall need to be carefully managed by the council and its specialist contractors, and this is unfortunately a slow process. Our experience of similar works here in Huddersfield Town Hall and many of our other older listed buildings reinforces the need to work carefully and fully understand the extent of works before we commit scarce resources. It is very rare that when you start to look in detail at such buildings that you don't find some hidden problems that need addressing to ensure the safety of the building and those that use it. We hope to get the results of the survey in the autumn. As you know, the Town Hall teams has been working with the users of the hall to try and find them alternative venues. I fully appreciate how important it is to your societies to perform in your hometown, but hopefully you can appreciate how important it is that you use venues which are safe for all, because we have a duty of care for the performers, crew, front of house staff, volunteers and audiences. I can assure you we don't take these decisions lightly. As we mentioned, you may need to consider other venues now when planning for next year, as we can offer no guarantees that they will be open at the times you usually use it. To carry out any remedial work in a listed buildings such as the Town Hall takes a lot of time, as the work is often specialised and needs to be worked in conjunction with other organisations, such as Historic England. So it does take time, hence why I can't commit to a timescale. I am pleased to report that the issue at Batley Town Hall caused by the recent heavy rain a few weeks ago was not as serious as first thought, and so Batley Town Hall can be once again used as a performance venue. I understand that this is far from ideal, but at least we do have alternative provision so that you can use to ensure your productions can still go ahead. We want all our local cultural groups and organisations to thrive, as they are a very important part of our local communities. As I said earlier, I can assure that our Town Halls team will work with all user groups to find suitable alternative venues where possible to ensure the show goes on. Please feel free, if you want to discuss further, to contact me, and I promise we'll keep informed of progress. So once again, thank you very much for coming along this evening, and I hope that I've been of some help, and have a safe journey home. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner, and thank you those people who have attended this evening with their deputations. Item 5, moving on. Public petitions, we have none. Item 7, public question time. We have no questions from members of the public. Item 8, page 11, minutes of West Yorkshire Combined Authority. To receive for information the minutes of West Yorkshire Combined Authority. The minutes are here for noting. Are there any comments or questions regarding the minutes? Councillor Cooper. .
I noted that in one of the items there was reference to changes to governance arrangements. What I didn't see was any reference to the thing I've raised with the Mayor, Tracy Brabin, which is the lack of a Green Party representative on the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. And you'll note at the 2023 local elections, the Green Party achieved 12.6% of the vote across West Yorkshire and had 65,580 voters voting for us. The Liberal Democrats achieved 10.3% of the vote and had 53,680 people voting for them. And I do not begrudge, as the Mayor knows, the place that the Liberal Democrats have on West Yorkshire Combined Authority. But I would like to ask if the Leader of the Council would speak to the Mayor, as I have done, and ask them if they can change the arrangements that we have with the devolution agreement, and to request to the Secretary of State that an additional place be allowed so the voters who voted for the Green Party, the 65,580 people, can have a stake in the authority and their votes be recognised. Will the Leader of the Council be doing that to make sure that voters are represented?
Thank you, Councillor Cooper, as always. Are there any other questions and comments on item 8? Councillor Marchington. Councillor Pandor, if you could respond to them all at the end, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following on from Councillor Cooper's question, perhaps I can put something to Councillor Pandora as well, if he's asking about governance arrangements. As he well knows, the representation on the combined authority is based on the number of councillors elected across the borough. And of course, that disproportionately affects the two major parties in the country, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. They are vastly overrepresented in that respect. And it's not just an issue for the Greens, it's for other smaller parties and perhaps the independents. And it's really important we have a diversity of views. So although Councillor Cooper keeps quite rightly pointing out about the number of votes that are cast for each party across the borough, it's the number of councillors that, that actually leads to the representation at the moment. I think a number of us who want to see better governance think better governance arrangements should be applicable in West Yorkshire. And we see our colleagues in Wales moving towards that. Next year's local elections in Wales will be done using a single transferable vote, as it is in Northern Ireland and in Scotland. And I might point out that the population of Wales, I believe, is actually slightly less than that of West Yorkshire. So why are we not entitled to a similar, better, more democratic and more representative electoral system? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marchington. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to touch on the item that relates to bus funding update. I'm sure we all welcome the £2 bus fares which were introduced. However, they are of little or no use in a service which is constantly being reduced to the point where it's no longer providing adequate services to many of our communities. We've just had another reduction in services in Lindley, and I'm just wondering what the Leader of the Council plans to ask the Mayor about how we can stop this reduction in our service and start bolstering services rather than cutting them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any further questions? Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just touching on the point that Councillor Cooper raises, I wonder if we could have some clarity. We've seen it at this council, particularly at the full council meeting, where political parties gift seats on committees, such as the Planning Committee, and often it's one of the minor parties that's gifting a seat to the Labour Party. Wouldn't it be appropriate, therefore, Mr. Mayor, if it was possible for Councillor Pandor to reciprocate that, and where somebody has gifted him a seat on a planning committee, such as in the Heavy Woolen, which affects Murfield, if he was to gift a seat to a minor party, I'm sure that reciprocal arrangement would be appreciated.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Bolt. If there are no further questions, I ask Councillor Pandor to respond.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the three questions. Firstly, Councillor Cooper's question regarding governance and the Greens getting 65,000 votes, and we have listened, because you probably know that voters will vote on policies, and Keir Starmer, I'm really pleased that he has said that he will develop a UK-wide energy company, first of its kind, publicly owned. So I'm sure the voters who voted for the Greens will next time vote for Labour Party, so hopefully we'll have a proper representation. And I'm really, really pleased that you asked that question, because, you know, where we see policies that will make a big difference, you know, we will take it on board, and we have openly said in our manifesto, Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, said that we will have a publicly owned UK energy company. So, you know, our policy is there. In terms of Councillor Marchington, yeah, I think the same thing. I don't want to add anything to what I've already added. Bus funding is a massive issue, Councillor Smith, and we all know that buses are the heartbeat and the veins and the arteries of local communities, because some of our most vulnerable people live in communities where bus services are sort of like don't exist. So it's a national issue. It's an issue that actually resonates with every single member of this council and other councils, and we will do everything we can through the Mayor, Tracy Brabin, to actually continue to actually, lobby government for a fair funding settlement. In terms of Councillor Martin Bolt, I'm glad you reminded me, Martin, regarding the gifting of the seat. Planning committee is a really important part of developing our local housing and local infrastructure and local business. And if Councillor Cooper really wants to make that big difference at a local level, to make sure that all our planned developments have a green credentials, then I would actually argue back and say, Councillor Bolt, come back on the committee, right? Yeah, because, we could do with your expertise. On the one hand, you're complaining that you don't go have a voice, but when you give a voice to you, you give it back to us. So unless you sort of have double standards, which clearly you have, yeah, please take up your seat. We want you in the council. We want you to make them real decisions in planning, where you can actually make a real stance and express your views, so we know how committed you are to your green credentials. Or is it because you just want to sit on the fence and not take any decisions? I'll leave that to the public out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Moving on to item 9, page 51, Pay Policy Statement, reference from Personnel Committee. Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Sections 38, 43 of the Localism Act 2011 requires that the authority produce a policy statement that covers several matters concerning the pay of the authority staff, principally chief officers. You'll see that the attached policy statement appendices meet the requirements of the Localism Act. So I move that the pay policy statement be approved in accordance with the Localism Act 2011.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Mr Mayor. I reserve the right. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments on this matter? If not, we will go to the vote, please, by a show of hands. All those for? Thank you. Against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That is carried. Item 10, page 71, Council Financial Outturn and Rollover Report 22-23, reference from Cabinet. Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So today, we're counting the cost of last year's economic and financial crises. Some of these challenges were unforeseeable. They were caused by international events. But many of our economic problems are homegrown, and their root causes go back further than last year. Over the past 13 years, consecutive Tory governments have mismanaged our economy and hollowed out our public services. From austerity to a mismanaged Brexit and reckless economic risk-taking. You just have to look at the infamous Liz Truss mini-budget. And it is the case that everyone in the UK is certainly poorer, apart from, of course, the super-rich. And that's unfortunately more true than Kirklees than in most places. The government has failed on the economy, and they failed on public services too. Hospital waiting lists, elusive GP appointments, and continual strikes are all symptoms of the same problem. Economic mismanagement and disregard for public services has caused a funding crisis that's now seriously affecting English local government. So what does that look like in terms of this council's finances? In total, the cost of living crisis and demands on services added some £27 million to our spending over the course of the year. Despite the major challenges, the outturn report shows our financial planning was prudent and robust. And as a result, we've been able to offset many of the extra costs by using our reserves. And, as we know, we took immediate action to reduce costs, freezing much of our recruitment, rephasing capital spending, and rationalising some of our buildings. It means we've been able to weather the storm for now. But the economic picture remains bleak for the country and for local government finance. Despite the promises, the government has lost control of inflation, and interest rates are hurting investment. The situation leaves households and public services with difficult choices to make during this financial year. The costs of pay, energy, goods and services all remain high. And with increasing demands on services like social care, it's no wonder the councils up and down the country are preparing to make tough decisions. This means tough choices, which in reality have been imposed on us by central government. But we will stay true to our values, and as far as we possibly can, we will set about to protect vital services that safeguard our children and help them to thrive. We're also focused on making efficiencies, especially in the back office, so that we can maintain frontline services. We'll continue to improve our local economy, investing prudently in our future and helping to avoid a future cost of living crisis. Where the government's been reckless, we have been prudent with taxpayers' monies over the years. Austerity took around £200 million from our revenue budget, and the system of government funding for councils has been shown to be unfair to places like Kirklees. The government has admitted this, but failed to deliver on any promises to rectify it. We've delivered financial stability for this council over the years. The government's economic incompetence and disregard for public services mean that task is getting increasingly more difficult. I move that the recommendations are set out in page 72, paragraph 6 of this report be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor, and reserve the right.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Are there any comments on this matter? Councillor Smage.
This is when you realise you should have worn shoes that don't echo. I'd like to ask a couple of local questions, please, on Cabinet decisions. On page 120 of our papers, you've got the smaller towns and villages capital budgets in there. On the 16th of March 21, you took a cabinet paper, you took a cabinet decision that to support the Batley, Cleckheaton, Holforth, Hetmond, Wyke and Marsden small centres. That cabinet paper then had district centres as the next level down. And I would like to know, please, if you are going to bring forward any monies for those district centres, of which Birstall is one of them. We are going to use some local money to help, but we would like to know if there is any monies coming from Cabinet as well, so that we can put forward a strategic plan for Birstall, because that is what is needed for the regeneration. I would also like to ask, in Appendix 8 of your papers, you mentioned earlier on about a shortfall in income from car parking through either closed or demolished parking facilities. And then you have, in your procurement of parking machines, you have a sentence that says it is likely that within the next 4 years, the extent of the council's pay and display areas will expand into new areas, requiring further parking machine procurements and infrastructure. And I'd like to know where the Cabinet are planning to put pay and display that is not currently pay and display, because areas such as Birstall, where we don't have pay and display, they could not support pay and display. It would have a detrimental effect on traders. So I'd like to understand where you're planning to put, in the next 4 years, more parking machines. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smedge. Are there any other comments? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you to Councillor Davis for his nothing to do with me gov speech, which I'm afraid has been rather a characterisation of Labour being in power in the Kirklees for the past 14 years, whereas we saw even other councillors, even under Labour, surging forward, and we've been treading water all that time. I just want to make a few points about the paper in front of us. The first is to welcome the reduction in looked after children numbers. I'm sure we'll all feel that that is a very welcome and good progress, and it ought to be noted. I'd like to ask a question about the overspending bereavement services, and perhaps one of the Cabinet members could tell me whether this is due to the closure of the crematoria for so long. And the third thing I wanted to mention, Mr Mayor, is just a slight nervousness, and I have raised this issue before in Council and in other committees, to do with vacancies and agency spend, because there are 6 individual mentions of overspends in different departments due to the use of agency staff or locums. At the same time, there are several references to we are saving money because of vacancy management. Now, these, in certain places, might be what the answer is to the particular problems in the particular directorates concerned, but when you bring them together, that is not sustainable in the long term. And I think the Council is going to have a long look at the way we budget and the silos we operate in to make sure that some of that can be rubbed out in the long term. So if I could have a couple of answers to those questions, please, Mr Mayor, I'd be grateful.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor John Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I start, a quick thanks to the team for putting the outturned document together. I think we all acknowledge now that there are no peaks and troughs in this activity anymore when it comes to budgetary reports. It's not an annual report anymore where we all get together, we discuss it, and then it all goes quiet for a year. It's now a constant dialogue. We're constantly monitoring this stuff year round, and from officers, it's a lot of hard work, and we appreciate that. That's not to say we always enjoy reading them, but we do value those broad pictures that are painted for us. Just wanted to make a couple of comments about the report in front of us. First of all, it's a numbers report, so hard to get some of that qualitative stuff from an outturn report like this. So we don't really get a sense of the pace of deliverability or progress, which is the thing that we're all anxious to see. And it would be good to have that information in public view as soon as possible. I get all the commercial confidentiality issues and understand the reasons for it, but I'd encourage Labour to be as transparent as they can on this. Include residents, include members. Related also to what's not here, or possibly in the next item, the corporate plan, which I feel as though we can talk about here because they both concern financial recovery and resilience, is the sense of any political conversations with residents about what's going to happen to their services and their environments. Liberal Democrat group firmly believe that services and environments should be modelled with people who use them and who are affected by them, with no sense of those discussions taking place, and us being nearly halfway through the year, I'm afraid the Cabinet saying it's under review, or we'll tell you later, it won't wash for much longer, especially in places like the Cleckheaton Town Hall issue. People do need to know about changes in advance so they can make arrangements. Finding out the week before that their services are going to change is not helpful. I'll mention one more thing that the report doesn't highlight, and that we don't get that sense of, that would probably be quite valuable to us. And that's all the hard work and dedication shown by our staff. In the parts of council where I have direct contact, specifically in corporate parenting, planning and personnel, our workforce is facing different challenges, but staff are responding with the same response. That's with resilience, creativity and hard work. We need to recognise that in this chamber, and Cabinet needs to find a way to celebrate and nurture and harness that energy. And the last point I'd like to make is also something that isn't in there, but it is about numbers. And I raise this at every outturn, and with good reason. We need to know how much of our revenue we're spending on servicing debts. And some projections around the future borrowing on that figure and what proportion that is, a tracker of some sort maybe. I get that the debts mature all the time, so the figure bobbles up and down and is fluid, but to see that trend and have an idea of that proportion and that it is sustainable will be increasingly more important when Labour make their decisions on what to change, what to cut, and what projects are no longer deliverable in the medium term. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Cooper.
This is a scary read, really, looking at the future that we're facing, and with the outturn and the diminishing reserves that we're looking at coming through here. So the question really is what is it that we as councillors can do? What is the difference that we as councillors can make? And the Budget Oversight Group that some of us are members of is a way of us having an overview of what's going on. We can see what we can see possibly in more detail and with more clarity the problems that we're facing. But I think there's more that we can do, and I think we need a different approach to budget amendments. I think when budget amendments are brought forward, there's like an automatic, right, we're going to vote against that because it's not us, and therefore we're going to dismiss it. And I think in the situations that we're in, that perhaps we need to take a different approach and actually collaborate at an earlier stage with other parties and say, what is it that we can agree with? What are the things that you're bringing forward here which can actually make a difference and actually have an amendment which comes from all groups going forward and providing some unity. So I think that's something that we can do, and that would be a change, and it could be a change to the culture of the council, which would be a good thing. Also, I think we need to be looking at the partners we got, other councils that are in similar situations, other councils that are going to be in the same place that we are, and asking ourselves, what are we doing to collaborate with them? What are we doing together that we can give a stronger voice to local government, either through the Local Government Association or through other bodies where we can actually make a difference. Before, I remember a few years ago, we went as party leaders to lobby the minister directly, giving a united voice across the political groups. And actually, I don't think it made that much difference, but at least we were trying, and it was good. Another thought, we have a corporate risk register that looks at the risks to the organisation, those financial risks and other risks that we have, the changes in policy and legislation which can affect us. I've been saying for a long time that we ought to have a corporate opportunities register where we don't just systematically look at risks, we also systematically look at the opportunities that we can take advantage of. And that means the partnerships that we can have with other organisations that who can help us achieve our objectives, those organisations that can do things that we can't in the voluntary and community sector. Actually to demonstrate through that opportunities register that we are looking at all the opportunities there, financial opportunities. And if we're not taking them up, having really good reasons why not. You know, is it capacity? Are there things that we can change that would really make a difference? Should we be putting more money into the delivery into feasibility and studies and other such things which enable us to take advantage of funding? Could we be working across the West Yorkshire authorities to deliver those services? So I bring back my call for a corporate opportunities register. I've put it before, and I will maybe bring it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Pandor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to address a few issues that have just come up regarding our capital programme, Councillor Lismage, there is nothing agreed in terms of how we actually change the capital programme, but we continue to look at how we flex that programme because we need to make sure we keep our ambition. So that's on the review, and I'm sure Councillor Davies might elaborate on that. In terms of any parking charges, additional parking spaces, again, nothing has been agreed. But having said that, we have to also bear in mind that we are in a situation where the council's finances, not just ours but across the country, are running out very, very fast due to underfunding. Our core government grant having been reduced, every pound we got, we are now 60 pence worse off, and that's a fact. But we will make sure that we safeguard every single person in Kirklees to make sure that we look after, firstly, the most vulnerable in our communities. In terms of the overspend of £27 million, it's not a figure that has been just plucked up out from mid-air. We've had inflation at a rate that has never been seen in this country as far as I can remember, nearly approaching double figures. And more recently, it's been reviewed. We were hoping inflation would have come down quite a lot, but a revised figure from the Treasury and the Office of Budget Responsibility is that it's still far too high. So all the forecasts that we got from government have gone out the window. But that is still a pressure. Inflation is actually eating away at not just council's finances, but household incomes as well. Energy and gas, that is a massive, massive drain on our resources because like households, we have to pay our energy, we have to pay our bills. And also the staff award, there's still the staff award negotiation to be settled. But last year, because of the settlement and what we projected for, what we budgeted for, was not enough to pay for the additional millions that we had to provide. And demand, both from an adult social care point of view, children's services point of view and demand in terms of public services has actually meant that we've had to spend more money where we have to and where we need to. This is all in the backdrop of change in government rapidly that has actually completely shocked the foundations of society and the economy. And quite rightly so, the government had to actually put in £70 billion just to stabilise the country. And we can't hide away from that fact. You know, that was a catastrophe for people like me and you and our residents in this room. And so far, I can't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And what we really need is a massive shake-up in fundamental policies. And that's where there will be a fundamental choice that we will have to make. In terms of Andrew Cooper, he's completely spot on. This is not just this council. This is councils up and down the country. I meet council leaders from all different political parties, and they say to me, Shabir, we cannot sustain our basic level of service. Walking, which was run by the Conservative government before the last local election, you know, it just transpired when the new administration took over, they've got a £2 billion debt. Their money that is coming in is less than the money that they're actually owed. So the debt thing that you talked about is spot on, Councillor Lawson. But hopefully we will not be in that situation. But one thing that we will have to face is massive, massive changes, massive transformations and big decisions. I don't want to be in that situation, but we have to make sure that we do everything we can. And if we can do that through a cross-party budget group that we formed, that would be really great. The LGA just recently, a couple of weeks ago, on top of the billions that we need in our adult social care, in our children's services, in terms of making sure that the services that have been decimated since 2010 up to now are actually brought back to a standard, there's been an additional £3 billion pressure just to maintain services as they are, as we see them today. £3 billion. Now, that's not sustainable. You know, so there's got to be some give somewhere, and there's got to be some rethinking somewhere, and there's got to be a change of policy and direction. And I hope that we can all get behind that for the sake of our local communities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pandora. I'm closing the list, so Councillor Marchington will be the last speaker. Councillor Bolt, please.
Picking up on the point of the overspending issues with crematoria, particularly in North Kirklees, probably worth just looking back at what money has been spent on the Dewsbury crematorium. And we've got some councillors here who've been involved in that. Councillor Mather celebrated spending £3 million in January 2019 on Dewsbury Moor crematorium. Councillor Rob Walker, who's no longer a member of the council, celebrated spending £3 million on the crematorium. And our deputy leader, Cathy Scott, celebrated spending £260,000. So that's over £6 million. And we're now here that Dewsbury crematorium is to be closed again while it needs essential roofing work. This essential roofing work wasn't carried out when it was recently closed for mercury abatement or anything else. So, Mr. Mayor, in looking at prudent financial management, what could have the people of North Kirklees have had? Well, Mr. Mayor, a plan was passed, planning permission submitted, and planning permission was approved in 2009 for a brand new crematorium in Dewsbury in the same area. Mr. Mayor, the plans there were new build, 1.400. So that, Mr. Mayor, would have been far cheaper, not have disrupted the bereaved and the business case that we see, if we'd have had a new build. That new build, Mr. Mayor, is worth, again, just reflecting that that was passed by the Cabinet Committee for Regeneration, March 2006, when we had a Cabinet that were committed to providing services for all our communities, a Cabinet that were looking at the issues which faced us. We knew at that time the difficulties, because for the benefit of those who might not know, the existing crematorium in Dewsbury needed an Act of Parliament to site it where it is because of highways legislation. But luckily in 2006, Mr. Mayor, we had a cabinet that was willing to make those decisions. That, Mr Mayor, was a Conservative cabinet. Looking at other issues that we should, there is a bad debt provision on page 85 of this report, and it refers to KSDL. So perhaps in summary, we can have a position statement on the Council's debt provision with Kirklees Stadium development and the future of our holding. Also in the reports we have before us, Mr Mayor, is a definitive statement which I think bears relevance to the issue of our financial management. On page 184, it says the Cabinet noted that the Council faces a continuous threat of bribery and corruption. That, Mr Mayor, is a very worrying statement, that we face a continual threat. How many cases have been brought where that has actually happened? There's a difference between a perception and reality, and I think we need to know, Mr Mayor, when we have a statement like that in papers, what is the reality? Mr Mayor, perhaps also, if the Cabinet were to do things once and do it properly, we could save money. Like listening to councillors and the public, that when our communities don't face repeated illegal encampments and the inevitable drain on officer time and the public purse that they cost. If we did things right and did it once, we could resolve that. And part of that, as has been mentioned in this chamber before, is using the law as it now stands, that the council can direct illegal encampments to leave and the police then have to enforce it as a criminal offence. We don't have to go through a lengthy civil procedure if the Cabinet wish to obey the law, if the Cabinet wishes to enforce the law. We're talking in the report also about burial provision, and again, that was something that I know myself and colleagues were looking at in 2006. As the only councillor from the Dewsbury area who attended a multi-faith meeting in Dewsbury a while ago, the report refers to Muslim burials, and I'd like clarity on this, that the meeting I attended was a multi-faith meeting in Dewsbury Minster with members of all faith and none there. So can we have clarity that this Cabinet is looking at the future of burial provision for all faiths and none, Mr Mayor? The report also talks about an overspend on the A62 scheme. Mr Mayor, that road is still probably...
Councillor Bolt, thank you very much. Your time's up. Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you to everybody who's put in so much effort to preparing the report in difficult times. Thank you, Paul, for your introduction to this, your description of the times we find ourselves in, financial mismanagement, strikes, ongoing strikes. Reminded me a bit about the 1970s, particularly the winter of discontent, and what we haven't got at the moment is refuge on the streets. And thankfully, we've made a settlement for wages in Kirklees. But we need a long-term solution and long memory to this. It's unfortunate, Shabir, I can't remember the last time that we had double-digit inflation. That's the 1970s as well. And there's a danger of us repeating the mistakes of what happened in the past. And we do need sound financial management, and that needs to come from central government and from local government. We know it's difficult times, but the council needs to do the best with the money that it's got. I've said this before, and I think I ought to get it on a postcard and print it up, is we need long-term solutions to how we finance the country. We cannot, no matter how efficient we are or how careful we are with the money, raise sufficient money locally. To meet the £27 million deficit we had last year would have required an 18% increase in the council tax. And given that some members of this chamber chunter about the 5%, 2% of which is government imposed to pay for adult social care, then we know it's not a local solution. So we need a root and branch reform of how local government is financed, but also how the country is financed. We don't want politicians in Westminster mucking around with the economy. We need financial and political stability at a national and local level. And I think at the points I do agree with colleagues, we all need a better understanding of how the national and local economy works and how we can work towards better solutions. And I know those of us who have been involved in the Democracy Commission for a long while have seen other places, Sweden, the United States, Germany, how local economy and control of local economy works much better. It does also concern me, Shabir, about some of your grasp of the detail, because I know it's going to be difficult, but when you made the point about needs in in children's services, that is absolutely right. But actually, children looked after is going down, you know, in the report from 620 to 603. So that's not the issue. It's the higher needs that are the issue. And we just hope that Cabinet members have got a grasp of their own portfolio so that they can look at the detail and that Cabinet works as a whole for that. I'll quote you on that, Shabir. And again, just a little point as well, I know it's Cathy, it's your portfolio, but the overspend on council house repairs in the HRA, I understand there might be good reasons for that, but that's not what it feels like for our residents, because there's still people waiting for repairs and stuff. So it's the detail, even with our reduced funds, that's going to make the biggest difference over the years to come in very, very difficult times. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Marchant. In right of reply, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And good to see a very lively discussion. It's interesting. So I'll try my very best to cover most of the points. If I miss anything, by all means, whoever's raised those points can contact me separately, and I can get them the information that they've requested or comments on what they've said. So, Councillor Smays, certainly in terms of the district investment that you referred to, there will, fortunately, be some detail later on where Councillor Turner will be responding to a question and we'll have some of that detail. So that should hopefully help. So rather than try and replicate that, he will be doing that later on. I think Councillor Panda already referred to the parking fees, but just to emphasise, we certainly do not want to be imposing any further expansion of car parking fees. However, I don't think we can discount that at this point in terms of our problems. There were the finance, our falling incomes, and increasing demands and inflationary costs, as you know. So at this point, it's certainly not something that's discounted. Are there definitive plans? No, they're still being worked through currently at this point. In terms of agency recruitment, Councillor Hall, and the budgets and recruitment generally, absolutely right. This is a key area for us, and staffing costs clearly are significant. We're a service organisation, and indeed there will be, already there's been great attention paid to this, and certainly, as I said earlier, we know we've frozen quite a lot of our recruitment. There will be increased vigilance and review and robustness in this whole area, so absolutely correct. And I can't help but comment. I do understand for our Conservative colleagues, it is painful to hear about what's happened in the last 13 years. But one thing I can say and assure you is nowhere near as painful that comes about for ordinary working people who've experienced what's happened through austerity, inflation, seeing their mortgages, accessing food banks. So you can mutter and chanter as much as you like in the background. In terms of and I'm probably jumping along here, I'll probably jump to Councillor Boat actually. Yes, it is multi-faith burial provision. I think that's been confirmed on a number of occasions now. And in terms of the comment, and I know you're desperate to find something to say the administration out of control, the comment on the threat of bribery and corruption, absolutely we've talked about that because there's an increased focus on risk management. Martin Durnley and his team are doing a brilliant job, and that is something we discussed at a cabinet level and ensuring that we've got enhanced procedures and approaches to help prevent that. All our organisations are under a continual threat of bribery and corruption, and particularly organisations such as ourselves in this sector, and where there are significant procurement contracts. It's not a sign or an indication that we actually have a huge problem, far from it. Councillor Lawson, in terms of pace and progress, then I agree. We certainly, as you know, are driving this forward, our plans as quickly as possible, but doing it in a measured way without any knee-jerk reactions. But that communication, I think, is an important point you raise with citizens and with members, and it's something we certainly, I think, we need to raise and discuss at the cross-party meeting to understand how we do that. In principle, I'm absolutely in favour of transparency. In reality, as you know, some things we will have to decide how we do that. But certainly, I think that's an area, point well made, and an area we should look at. Absolutely agree with Councillor Marchington in terms of local control, and more local control and devolution funding. I think you'd expect me to agree with that. And I think I'll probably leave it at that. And as I said, apologies if I missed anything. Please contact me separately if there's anything I've left out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Davis, thank you. We will go to the vote by a show of hands. All of those for? Against? And those who abstain? It's carried. Thank you. Item 11, page 153, Council Plan, reference from Cabinet. Councillor Pandor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for all the contributions. And it's actually quite a timely time for me to come here and talk to you about our council plan. And one thing that's coming out very, very clear that nobody can deny that we are living through difficult times. We've heard about economic chaos, political instability, industrial unrest at a scale, again, I've never seen. But the difference this time has been, right, that the public opinion is actually behind this. And there's something happening there, right, which we need to understand in terms of moving forward. This on the backdrop of insecurity at a global level. But I would say that local government has not been, and again, it doesn't matter which party has been in control of local government nationally, but that's where stability has been seen and evidenced. And it shows that if central government, no matter who they are, provide the resources and trust local government, we can provide that stability. As I say, we live in interesting times, but for too many people in Kirklees, they are hard times. Nearly a third of Kirklees residents, Kirklees young people, youngsters, live in poverty. Referrals to council, to local food banks have doubled in a year, and they are still going higher and higher and higher. We represent a council that's demonstrably underfunded, which has come out quite clearly in this report, whilst other parts of our country where there are not as many needs continue to flourish. So there's a definite need for redistribution. But for hard times, but the hard times didn't come out of nowhere. The challenges we face now are built on more than a decade of mistakes and missed opportunities, and we keep on hearing about 13 years of failure, and that's what I'm referring to. A disastrous programme of austerity that not only took out £200 million a year from our budget, totaling £2.2 billion, but ripped the heart of our communities and widened the inequalities between the people of Kirklees and beyond. The pandemic that hit Kirklees harder than most, and a failed economic experiment that's driving up the cost of living for virtually every single household in Kirklees. It's now the council and the residents we serve who are counting the cost of those decisions, and they are the ones who are actually bearing the brunt of this. It's up to us, all of us in this room, to find a way through it and change people's lives for the better. But it's going to be difficult. But if you're going to change things, you need a plan. And that's why I'm really, really pleased that we have a plan in front of you, which I'm sure that, I'll get plenty of comments, because we need to get it even better. And I'm happy to take any positive feedback on that. I'm proud because the plan offers hope. It offers real hope. It's a plan that's realistic about the challenges we face today and in the future. Alongside our commitment priorities, it gives us a way through the challenges that we're all up against. Faced with an economic and financial situation that's rapidly changing, we need a laser-like focus on the immediate issues. That means urgently addressing our budget situation. Our core services can only make a difference if they're built on solid financial platforms. The odds are stacked against us. Our services and our people are held back. Year in, year out, this is the same situation that is imposed on us by central government, that is making sure that councils are starved of the vital resources that we need. The underlying unfairness is being exposed like never before, and it means painful choices ahead. But the plan is not just about making savings, it's about changing the way we do things and minimising the impact on the people who need our services the most. In an economic crisis, it's those who can least afford it who are hit the hardest. That is why transformation is at the heart of this plan. It's also about working with our partners to support people through the cost of living crisis. The Council stood shoulder to shoulder with our partners in health, education, voluntary and the community sector during the pandemic. And we will do this again. We face very difficult challenges ahead. But we also have to focus on a brighter future. Whilst I became leader, one of the main priorities I had was to set a budget for investment. And I'm no less committed to driving them ambitions forward. In fact, I'm probably more ambitious and more determined than before, despite what's happening on the backdrop of national government changes. That's why the plan reasserts its commitment to rebuilding our infrastructure, to invest in our communities across Kirklees. We've seen investment starting in Huddersfield, in Dewsbury, Batley and Heckman-Wyke and Holmfirth, and we will continue to do that. The best way to protect our communities from a future cost of living crisis is to build a strong and inclusive community and economy that works for everybody and leaves nobody behind. Of course, we need to be prudent in how we deliver our investment. Unlike government, we live in the real world.
Councillor Pandor, thank you. Your time is up.
I told you I was going to be an hour.
Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Scott. Are there any comments on this matter? Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Pandor, for that introduction. The first thing in the plan, and when people talk about plan, I'm always reminded of Blackadder and Baldrick's cunning plans, that there are no measurable outcomes, so that when we come back to review it, how are we going to be able to assess the leader's delivery? The leader talked about having solid financial platforms to work on. On that basis, could I ask that he shares with the Council and the public the solid financial plans which the Cabinet approved for the expenditure and allocation of business space within the new Spen Leisure Centre for a cafe? A cafe had the investment in all the infrastructure to run it, but closed within a year because the staff said it wasn't economically viable. Where is the sound financial platform? Which business would see a business fail within that, with a captive audience and a much wider potential? And why hasn't that cafe been handed to the private sector if the council can't run it, rather than just lose the investment in the infrastructure? The plan again, and we refer to this many times, talks about councillors as place leaders at the heart of what we do. We're going to place the councillors as local place leaders. Well, please do that, Shabir. Please designate every elected member as a council representative for the terms of the Police, Crime and Sentencing Act 2022, so that we can act as local place leaders when our community needs us. The plan talks about doing things differently. What we see a lot is much of the same. Continuing to invest in our future, and again we talk about investment in a number of places, but not places like Murfield and others which I think are of significance. We see plans for Huddersfield and Heckman-Wyke. Mr. Mayor, in March 2021, which strangely was just before the local elections, the Cabinet considered £1.5 million of financial investment for Heckmondwike. And this is on the webcast and is good watching, because during that I raised the question that could the money be used to buy the land and deliver the Spen Valley Ringway, which was a great community demand. We were told then, and I'm pleased to see Steve in the room, that can sleep soundly, it's all in hand. Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm glad I've been sleeping soundly, because certainly the delivery of the Ringway, nobody's put a spade in the ground, nobody's put anything in hand, and the community is still concerned that that facility will never be delivered. So before we do start to have restless nights, Steve, where's the 1.5 million gone, and when are we going to see the Ringway delivered? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bork. Councillor Smage.
My comments are as my role in scrutiny, so please take them as scrutiny comments. Thank you for including in the report the points that were made at OSMC when we were consulted on the draft plan, including acknowledging the impact of economic and financial challenges on partners, making it clear how priorities are connected to the longer-term vision and outcomes, and ensuring the approach to measuring performance and impact is clear. OSMC will be looking throughout the year at finance, risk and performance, because I think it's especially important at these times that scrutiny is involved in that. But one thing that is in your report is that your performance and impact reports will continue to be twice yearly. And I would hope that both scrutiny and the Cabinet would have information between those points as well, in order that we can look at how the council plan is impacting on both services and communities in real time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smage. Councillor Cooper.
When I read this plan, I don't see it as Councillor Pandor says, it's the plan offers hope. When I read it, I don't think this is a 6-month plan. It's a stopgap plan. I don't look at this and think there's going to be an iconic image of Councillor Pandor in sort of red and blue saying hope underneath it. It's not that sort of plan, to be quite honest. It is definitely a stopgap. It's less, yes, we can, and more, unfortunately, we can't, because that's the nature of the financial situation we're in. So going forward, I think we've got to ask ourselves, how do we produce a meaningful council plan, which is a vision, which will last the 4 years that I think a proper council plan would look over. And of course, we've got to ask ourselves, how do we produce a plan in a time of change? How do we produce a plan in a time of omni-crises, omni-shambles during omni-crisis often? So I'd be really interested to know what the approach will be for the next council plan. And will it be a 4-year plan? And will it be a meaningful 4-year plan which the council can get behind? And yet, not a mention of climate change in the plan.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, there might be a plan, there should be none of us have got a particular confidence that you've got a grip on it, and it is a good job that your cabinet members have. It's interesting that when you come to, in the last couple of times you've been to the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee, that you don't seem to have a grip of the detail, and that is really vital coming forward. and it is very, very, very frustrating in these difficult times. You've talked about redistribution. If we just redistribute, it's just moving the deck chairs on the Titanic. What we need is restructuring. And we need restructuring in the local economy, and we need restructuring of the whole economy. What we see is the Bank of England using old techniques to try and sort things out. Lots of us who were just taking out mortgages in the early 1990s remember interest rates rising from 7.5% to 15%. My mortgage rate doubled overnight. Thank goodness that didn't last for very long. That would have, I'd have been in deficit on that. And that's still going on. And unless the Labour Party is prepared to learn from the mistakes it made in the 2000s, and it did, a massive public sector spending binge, which nearly bankrupted the country, not just the banks, then how can we trust the Labour Party to sort out the problems of the future? We need prudent management, both at local and national level, and we need evidence of that. So I'm glad that some members of your cabinet do have a grip, and hopefully that filters through. We see examples of other countries doing it so much better than we do. France, when energy prices were rising, they told the companies what to do. Put a cap on it. Not shifting, giving everybody a bung, so they vote them in a local or national election. You can charge no more than this. They're running a monopoly. In Germany, again, a very different country, the prices of basic levels of food were capped. They were told to do it, like it or lump it. So the stuff we're told, we know we're in difficult times, but we need better solutions. So when you're talking about food banks, filter that through to those people who might be able to do something different next time. So what I would like to see is a local government that works out what we need to do and how much money we need to spend it. Not say throw $1 billion here or $1 billion there, millions here or there, whether it's on user crematorium or something else. What do we need to do? We work through the local government association, and then central government, either that is, raises the money accordingly. We need a plan, we need a good plan, but we also need that plan to work with everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marchington. Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to sort of stand up and talk about Hetman White, seeing as Councillor Bolt raised it. He appears to be extremely jealous of Hetman White. Goodness knows why. I absolutely, along with my ward councillors, welcome the 1.5 million investment in Hetman White, because Hetman White is a town that's divided by a road that is constantly being blocked. It's not easy to get around in. We have empty properties that we struggle with. We have the largest number of free school meals in Kirklees in our ward. It is a ward that really struggles, and we deserve this investment. As ward councillors, we fund a monthly market to try and help things along and make it more vibrant. But we're the town with a library where you can't use the upstairs floor because the roof is falling apart and dead pigeons fall through. We are the library that's got holes in the wall, and we need the new library, which is part of this development. And I'll just comment on the Ringway. I've been part of the campaign for Spen Valley Ringway right from the very beginning. And the Ringway does exist. It's owned by Sustrans, and it goes all the way to Royts Park. The bit that's the problem is about half a mile or a mile, I'm not sure how much, that is privately owned. It was purchased, I understand, for $600,000. The private owner, I understand, would be willing to sell it for $800,000. Officers say the value of the land is about $150,000. So would it be wise and proper use of public funds to use investment to buy that? And I have to say, people still use it. I use it. I walk through it, whether it's a trespass or not. And I'm absolutely assured that the infill of it won't be happening in the foreseeable future because of what's gone through planning about sites that can be used for that. So whilst it is an issue, and I would love to see it all in one, no one more than me, at the moment it is not the right and sensible thing to think of using public funds for that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to cover one real point on the plan. Oh, by the way, just as a point, just for Shabir, inflation at its highest in this country was 24% in 1975 under your stewardship of Harold Wilson. I just thought you might want to know that because you weren't aware. So there is a challenge with the spending. And I think one of the challenges, more than anything, is if this place was a household and we were in dire straits, would we attempt to take a massive loan into redecorating and refurbishing our front garden and spending £250 million on it to make it look prettier and nicer and hopefully attract more people into the town centre? And would we spend £4 million on trees? So if we had a back garden and we were wanting to plant trees but we couldn't afford to feed the children, would it be appropriate that we did that? I think what I'm trying to point out is there seems to be an awful lot of spending and borrowing on things that could be postponed and they could be delayed or they could be eliminated altogether to allow us to spend money on things that are essential so that we're balanced as far as child services, adult services, teaching, and we forget about borrowing the potential of 250 million that could cost us at least £10 million a year in interest that we haven't got at this moment in time, that we've all agreed that we haven't got because things are bad. So why are we even attempting to go forward with such plans? And as far as spending £4 million on trees, because we want to be seen to be flag-waving the climate challenges, it will make no difference whatsoever to our climate in our communities over the next few years, whether we plant those trees or we don't. Wouldn't that £4 million be better spent in the communities that it's really needed? Thank you, Chair. Oh, but just one more thing. I know that we've had problems and things are in dire straits as far as leadership's concerned. But I've got to say at least our leader knows what a woman is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't actually going to speak to this item, but I just want to respond to a couple of things that Councillor Thompson has brought up there. And first of all, I get really annoyed about the analogy of a household to a country or a council. You can't compare the two things. They're not similar at all. You can't say we run up the credit card bill or this, that and the other. The fact is that as a person, as an individual, you have a lifespan and a shelf life where you need to go through your life, raise some money to pay for capital purchases, etc. But at some point, all that needs repaying within a lifetime. Councils and governments do not work in the same way, and debt can be structured sensibly to deliver the things that people need. I also want to take issue with the fact he said, I know we've got problems. We've got problems. After 13 years of this shambles, I cannot think of a single public service in this country that is better now than when they found it. Everything is in crisis. Everything is broken. We've got the largest tax burden in 60 years. We've got the largest national debt since the Napoleonic Wars. Where has our money gone? What's happened to our public services? This Tory government and the Tory councillors trying to defend them should be bloody ashamed. Thank you.
Councillor Reynolds, please. I will be closing the list after this.
Thank you very much. Just to add to those wonderful comments, I'm so glad that one of our fellow members thinks it's okay that the planting of trees and the long-term climate crisis can be put off. Good work there. Thank you.
Right of reply, Councillor Pandor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for all the comments. I'll try and address them where I can. I think one or two have been addressed by other members. But in terms of measurable outcomes, Councillor Bolt, we are outcome focused. Whatever we do in this cabinet is to make sure that we make that difference to every single resident in our communities. And we will continue to do that. In terms of Spend Leisure Centre, let me just give you some context, because it's not just about Spend Leisure Centre. Recently, I was talking to a group of local business owners, and what they were saying was that, Shabir, our sector, manufacturing sector, is at such a stage where the high-end products they produce, they will be able to keep on selling them, because there's still a lot of people out there who have got a lot of disposable income, and the high end, which you and I, most of the people in this room, will never be able to afford, but that will still keep on booming. The lower end of that manufacturing output, where people, like many people in this room, need that service, will probably not be able to afford that. Because what will happen, right, is they'll say, well, we'll do actually without, we'll wait another year, another 2 years. So what's happening is the way businesses are functioning and the way the rates, interest rates, inflation and supplies and of goods and services and their raw materials are going up in price, there are a lot of businesses out there that are actually brink of extinction, and you will see that in the next few months. I hope things change, but we are going into a crisis which I don't think that people really understand. When you talk to businesses out there, I talk to a lot of business through my combined authority role, and they are on the brink of extinction, and I mean that. The higher end on the market right here will sustain themselves. So when you talk about the cafe in the leisure centre, you know, that was based on the original business model. But if you can get me anybody who can run that cafe, I will personally meet them, you know, and if they can sustain that cafe in the leisure centre, more than happily. So that's a challenge back to you, Martin. In terms of the Ringway and Hickman-Wyke, Councillor Viv Kendrick has very eloquently explained that. Councillor Smaid, your comments regarding scrutiny, valid, and thank you for your contribution and all the good work you do and your team and all the staff that support you in that work. Councillor Cooper, you're spot on, 6 months. That you're right, because one of the things that we actually shared very early on while we were going through the budget process is we don't know what the future holds in terms of how we can plan for next year and the year after. We used to have budget settlements where we could actually plan and forecast a medium-term financial plan. We can't do that. We used to get information from government where by October, November, we actually knew exactly what we were doing. We're now waiting till not just the autumn statement, but nearly it's the winter/spring statement, and actually in New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve, we get the details, and officers have to run around and try and work hard to actually make sure that we actually get a budget agreed in the council so we can then carry on them services. So there's a fundamental problem in terms of how money is allocated to local government to enable them to plan effectively. The way we are running local government at this moment in time is not sustainable. But as a council, as a cabinet, and this is what I said in my earlier report, that the only place where you have sustainability is probably in local government, irrespective of which party is running that council. But you ask what we can do. Well, first and foremost, given that £200 million back that you've took out of our council budgets, get the fair funding formula back. You know, give it that fair funding formula. If that fair funding formula was reallocated, at this moment in time, we would be £30 million in credit. We would not be having these debates about what do we cut and what don't we cut. Also, what we need to do as councillors, step up to our responsibility. You know, not to say to Labour that actually we've got this place on planning committee and say, can you fill it? You know, step up to your responsibility. You know, you keep on arguing about you want more spaces. The spaces you've got, you can't take them up. So step up. And in terms of the green agenda which you touched on, and which also Councillor Thompson completely poo-pooed right here, that actually climate crisis does not exist. Well, I'm really, really proud that Keir Starmer very openly and honestly said that he will create the GB Energy Company, publicly owned, and we will be a national, international exemplar where we will lead the whole of the country, where we lead internationally on energy crisis and energy solutions and save the planet. You know, we were the lead in the Industrial Revolution. You know, this country actually did a lot of good work. We also now need to lead the country and the whole of the world in making sure that we have sustainable outcomes, sustainable development, and make sure that we actually save the planet, and we have a moral duty for that. And I'm really pleased that Keir Starmer is fully committed behind that. Councillor Marchington, you spoke earlier on and you tried to personalise issues on me. I ignored you. Again, you did the same thing to say that, you know, you need to understand the detail of the cabinet portfolio holders. And I take exception to that. And I won't going to respond to your comments, but I will do, because I think it's completely out of order. First and foremost, when I come to a scrutiny committee, the goalposts change. I'll come to a scrutiny meeting and you'll say, we want X, Y, Z. I'll come and deliver that. But then the questions I get asked will be completely different to what I was asked to come to talk about. And that is an issue for scrutiny committee to take on. And I'm going to have a meeting with Councillor Lismage that I want to help the scrutiny process, but I need to know what you want me to talk about, and then I can actually come prepared. Because otherwise, right, yeah, I'm wasting your time, and I want to try and make sure the time I give to your scrutiny is actually productive and adds value to the work we are doing in the council. The other thing is, you know, your party is playing NIMBY politics, and I don't think the space...
Councillor Pandor, your time is up. Thank you very much. We will go to the vote by a show of hands. All those for? Against? Abstain? It's carried. Thank you. We will have a short break for a minimum of 10 minutes. I would have let him kept going, but he was just getting silly. If he was just, I was trying to be fair to him. Yeah, so I saved him from it. But it's right then.
Members of the Council, honoured guests, please be upstanding for the Worshipful, the Mayor of Kirklees, Councillor Cahal Burke.
Okay, before we start item 12, can I just remind members to please be polite and courteous to each other at all times, and please watch the words that we use because some people may be offended. Thank you. Item 12, written questions to the Leader, Cabinet Members, Chairs of Committees and nominated spokespersons. A written schedule of submitted questions has been circulated. I will now invite members to ask their questions in turn. The appropriate member will then respond. One supplementary question to each submitted question is permitted. Question 1, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question to Councillor Ahmed. What is the road sweeping and maintenance regime for A roads across Kirklees?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor John Taylor. Road sweeping A roads, mechanical sweepers are deployed on the A roads with a frequency of between 6 to 8 weeks. The resources are also deployed in response to incidents and emergencies. Highway maintenance of A roads, inspections and surveys are undertaken in accordance with the Highway Maintenance Code of Best Practice 2016. Condition information is collected throughout the year and used in the development programme or works based on need. In March 23, the Council approved its 2-year highway maintenance programme of works. The programme includes a list of all the A roads which will benefit the resurfacing.
Thank you for that response. The reason I asked the question, and you might be surprised, is not in relation to a road in my ward. It's actually in relation to the A62 Leeds Road in Huddersfield. Recently, my car was in the garage and I had cause to walk, firstly from Cooper Bridge into town and back twice. I won't go into the detail. But it's rare that I walk on that road, and I guess the majority of members here rarely walk on it. I was shocked by the state of the pavements and the gutters, and they certainly didn't look like they'd been recently swept. And I know you say 6 to 8 weeks. There was detritus there that's been there for more than 6 to 8 weeks, I can assure you. As you get towards the town centre, we've got the areas where the road improvements have been taken out and done. And there's been some planting, which is great and it's wonderful to see. However, when you walk, those planted areas are littered already with litter. And that was my reason for asking about maintenance, because I know with the investment programme, we were putting in money to maintain the areas. And I just wonder whether he would be willing to perhaps come with me and have a little bit of a walk. But also I wonder whether there's an opportunity for the council to approach some of the businesses whose frontages have these small floral areas, whether they'd be willing to maintain them, because it looks dreadful. And this is our stadium to station corridor that's the entrance into Huddersfield. It's my town. It may not be my ward, but it's my town. And it looks dreadful. And I just think we as a group collectively should try and do something about it. So would he be willing to come and walk with me on the A62?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll be more than happy to walk with you. Not down the aisle, but definitely walk with you on Huddersfield Road.
Thank you. I did ask you to be more friendlier, so thank you for that. Councillor, yeah. Councillor Taylor, question 2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is Councillor Mather. How should residents dispose of DIY waste?
It'll be fine. Just go for it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Councillor Taylor, that would depend on what type of waste was being created, and I would suggest using our helpful online guide to check what goes where. And if a resident is paying someone to undertake some work, then I would encourage them to speak to the company in advance to understand where the waste is going. Or if the resident is producing larger amounts themselves, then our bookable bulky waste service receives fantastic reviews, or you could speak to many of our local skip providers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I asked this question is that there was a government announcement in June about household DIY waste, and that the government was changing the rules so that household DIY waste should be treated in the same way as household waste, and therefore should be able to be disposed of in the same way. Now, I know that a lot of councils have already reacted to that change, which is being enforced, and I'm wondering when Kirklees is going to react to that change similarly.
And so we know that small amounts can be broken up and put into your grey bin. Fly tipping, you know, we've always said that if we are not allowed to dispose of everything, it increases fly tipping. There's no linkage. But if residents are really having problems, all they need to do is call. Our services go and tell you how much they will charge. At this point in time, I don't think we're going to get to the point you're saying, which is free service. So bulky waste is chargeable.
Thank you, Councillor Mayor.
And I'm happy to go and walk with you as well.
Round a tip.
Question 3, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looks like I'm going to do a lot of walking at this rate.
Take them all together with you. It'll be fine.
This is to the Leader of the Council. Does the Council value volunteer groups, and should it focus on making it easier for them to assist the Council delivering services at this time of strained finances?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Taylor. Can I pass this on to the Cabinet Member responsible, Councillor Paul Davis? Paul, over to you. And I'd be happy to go and walk with you as well.
Clearly, the short answer is yes, we absolutely do value that relationship, so yes.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I asked this question is I work with and have helped with some funding for a group in my ward, the Burton Environment Group. They do exceptional work in 2 of my villages, Kirkburton and High Burton. They maintain council land for us. They do a lot of tackling weeds, cutting back things. They do planting. They're looking at improving the biodiversity in the area. You're probably aware of some of this, to be fair, Paul. For over 12 months now, they and I have been trying to get a storage container installed on Kirklees land where they can store the equipment they are using to look after that land. It has been going on for over 12 months, and it is damaging our reputation as a council that continually we are being asked, we've provided funding, we've asked for £500 for a lease fee, and despite me raising it with everybody I can raise it with, including as far as the Chief Executive, we're still waiting for the council to give permission so that this storage unit can be placed on our land to store the equipment is being used by a volunteer group that is doing work on behalf of the council. Can I ask yourself, and the reason I directed it to the leader was because it may be the leader, but can we do something to speed this up? Because if they're having these problems, I'm sure there are other volunteer groups that are also struggling. And I want them to focus on delivering things in the village rather than constantly having to chase the council for decisions.
Again, absolutely. I became aware of this fairly recently, essentially this week, so I will follow up on that. We certainly want to ensure that we're doing everything we can to have a speedy resolution of issues such as this. I know it is a frustration for many community groups. Within my own ward, I've dealt with a few issues and it's taken longer than people would expect, but I think 12 months does seem, in this particular instance, a long time as well. So I will pick that up and we'll get back to you as quickly as I can. And please, anything similar in the future, raise it directly with myself.
Thank you. Question 4, Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What is the population of the 6 valley wards that make up the rural part of Kirklees?
Thank you very much, Councillor Greaves. Can I ask Mr. Mayor the next 3 questions, questions 4, 5 and 6? I'd like to refer them to my Cabinet member, Councillor Graham Turner. So it's questions 4, 5 and 6. So, Graham, do you want to come up? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Councillor Greaves, thank you for the question. Based on the 2021 census, Denbydale has 16,632 residents, Home Valley South 19,503, Home Valley North 16,802, Combe Valley 17,579, Galk 18,736 and Kirkburton 16,310 gives you a total population of the above wards of 105,562 as of the 2021 census.
Thank you. Supplementary? No?
Yes.
Oh, you're doing it.
Thank you for that. So, the rural area has a population just slightly under a quarter of the population of Kirklees. And jumping ahead in today's agenda, on page 187, there's a section from a Cabinet report in January that identifies that the Home Valley North wards contribute roughly 25% more in the council tax base than the average. So my question is, from the hundreds of millions of pounds of capital spend that's been put across the whole of Kirklees, roughly what amount of that is going into the rural areas?
I couldn't give an exact percentage. Obviously, the Home Firth is on our programme and we're due to start work towards the end of the month in Home Firth. I'm not entirely sure why what somebody pays is relevant. We all pay into the central government. We all pay varying amounts of income tax, some more than others. We all pay varying amounts of VAT to other things we purchase. And we trust the government to spend our money wisely. Not always the case, obviously, but we hand that money over. We don't expect it back pro rata. That's not how it works. That's not how it's worked. Collective responsibility doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Much paying, it's just that we'd like to receive something.
Thank you. We want to have a conversation about that. But question 5, Councillor Greaves, you can go again.
What is the largest settlement in South Kirklees after Huddersfield?
Using the 2021 census, we believe Meltham is the largest settlement in South Kirklees after Huddersfield, with a population of 9,105. There is no standard definition of a settlement, so we've used a combination of ONS figures and what we know about the geographical proximity of towns and villages to one another to reach this conclusion.
Councillor Greaves, do you have a supplementary?
Oh, yes. At the last elections, we've got a lovely photo there of the Labour candidate, along with one of the cabinet members. At the last election...
Could you hold that up so I can have sight of it?
Yeah.
Thank you. You can put it away now.
So, on this side here, it says that Marsden and Home Firth have received substantial funding, and that if you vote Labour, you're going to secure substantial investment into Honley and Meltham. How?
I can't be responsible for what was in the election leaflet that I haven't seen.
Thank you very much. Question 6, Councillor Greaves.
Thank you. How much capital funding remains for towns and villages after funding Batley, Cleckheaton, Hetmond-Wyke and Home Firth?
Mr Mayor, Councillor Greaves, thanks for the question. So, as been mentioned earlier on, in March 2021, we allocated £1.5 million per town in the initial group to start a programme of town centre investment. They are all at slightly different stages of progress, but all are moving forward. This initial commitment, we estimate, has drawn in from various sources approximately £40 million of new investment. However, since then, as is well documented, local government is facing an unprecedented challenges around its funding and spending capabilities. We have stubbornly high inflation, rising interest rates, a stalled economy, a cost of living crisis and a rising demand for council services. A perfect storm for local government across the country. All these are putting a huge strain on both the council's revenue budget and the capital plan. We have an ongoing review of the capital plan, so until that is completed, it's not possible to say what, if any, headroom we have. What I can say is this administration is still ambitious and will seek out any external funding opportunities, as we have already done so, to invest in the borough, be that to support existing projects or to fund new investment. When the capital plan allows, we will seek further investment opportunities in the towns and villages not currently receiving that much needed funding. All future investment will be based on a master plan that will be developed around place-based working and the feedback from communities. So, Councillor, in line with this administration's ambitions to invest and make Kirklees the best we possibly can, I can assure you that when we can, and the funding allows, invest in other small towns and villages. What we won't do is put the council at risk by borrowing more than we can afford, and any future investment has to be for the right reason and deliver value for money. Sadly, for all the reasons I mentioned at the beginning of this response, I have no idea when that may be, nor do I suspect just anybody at this moment in time.
Councillor Greaves.
Yes, I have a supplementary. I don't think anybody can be in doubt about the council's finances or the state of the country, but there is one area in which this council could help the rural area very, very quickly, and that is by releasing the £1.7 million in Section 106 school contributions that it currently holds. Some of that money has been held for over 3 years. Some of it is getting close to timing out. Our schools need that money. We don't begrudge other people getting funding. We don't mind paying more than our fair share, but we have needs as well. Our schools have needs as well. You can't have missed the New Mill head teacher doing a skydiving fundraiser for her school, whilst actually being unaware that we're sat on, I think, £200,000 worth of funding for that school, money that was paid over some time ago that's still not been released. And in the Section 106 agreement for that school, it names it specifically. So some things are out of the control of the council, but there's plenty of things that are within the control of the council. If you're waiting, let me tell you, it's pouring down. Please, start releasing the money.
Section 106. All Section 106 for education are for capital only. So, yes, the head teacher, I saw it. I thought she was very brave. And I thought perhaps one or two people in this chamber might want to join us. And I thought perhaps one or two might want to do it without parachute. But she's right, £27,000 shortfall in the budget for teaching assistant posts held. But that cannot be bridged by Section 106. Section 106 is very clearly capital only. None of the schools in your ward have need any extra capacity. The fall in demand, actually, if you look from page 127 of the school plan, you'll see that the numbers are falling. No, hang on, let me finish. Let me finish. No school is going to thank anybody for building an extension when they can't afford to run the school they've got. Adding extra pressures to stretch budgets is not going to be welcomed. It can only be spent on capital.
Yeah, but it can only
Thank
be spent
you.
on capital.
No. Sorry, thank you. Councillor Turner, if I can just maybe, hopefully, suggest that you might be kinder in your words and not suggest any ill harm on anybody in this chamber.
All right, sorry. Thought it was being amusing.
No, we're not funny anymore.
Oh.
Question 7, Councillor Bellamy.
I thought it was funny.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Turner, how much money from 106 contributions has been received from developers in the Home Valley ward for education over the last 5 years?
Well, to date, in 2023, no money. 2022, £167,506.58p. 2021, £45,569.57. 2020, 0. 2019, 0.
Thank you. Thank you for that information. The reason I asked the question in relation to just the last 5 years is because most 106 contributions have a clawback clause written into them, of which is 5 years. So what I really would like to be interested to know is how many of the 106 contributions have exceeded the clawback clause, and why is that? And have any of the developers acted on that clawback clause?
Right, there is a clawback in section 106 after a period of time once it's been paid over. Having had numerous conversations with officers in anticipation of this, is in the last 20 years there has been no clawback from any developer. So if it runs over, there's no evidence that they would likely to claw it back. As I said earlier, it can only be used for capital. None of the schools in that area need any extra facilities at the moment. So the money has to sit there until that need is identified. And of course, that section 106 money doesn't buy you a classroom, it buys you a little bit of one. Somewhere along the line, somebody's got to find extra funding to build that capacity, but we don't need that capacity. We have falling numbers across that ward. Evidence in the school planning place document.
Thank you very much, Councillor Turner. Item 13, page 167, the minutes of meetings of the Cabinet and Cabinet Committee. Local issues are here for information to note. Item 14, holding the Executive to account. For Part A of this item, Council will receive a portfolio update from the Leader of the Council. Oral questions, comments to Cabinet members on their portfolios and on Cabinet minutes will be at Part B. So Part A, Cabinet Member Profile Portfolio Update. Can I now invite Councillor Pandor to present his update?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Earlier on this evening, I set my vision for this council through our council plan about how we need to overcome the financial challenges, how we will transform services, how we will support the most at risk through the cost of living crisis, and also invest in our future. But every plan needs two key ingredients, in my view. Firstly, it needs a dedicated team who will champion our priorities and be accountable for the delivery of them priorities. It also needs a set of actions that make the vision into reality. Our Cabinet team has come together to set out the roadmap for delivery. Against adversity, they have set out the priorities that will allow us to continue to deliver the outcomes and the change that we need in Kirklees. Next week, we will be presenting our priorities of the Cabinet to the senior leaders, the official leaders, officers of this organisation, and we will be held accountable for what they deliver on our behalf. And this will be delivered over the coming months. But I want to just touch on a few key priorities for this council as we move forward. The most important thing I'm sure we will all agree with is to make sure that our children, that are our future, do actually prosper, and every single child has the best opportunity that they can have when they start off in life. For many years, we've prioritised Ofsted inspection, and our children's services are well on the way to becoming one of the best children's services in the country. I'm really, really hopeful that we get a good Ofsted rating. That is our goal. For our programme to transform services for young people with extra needs, we'll continue to build capacity in the system and working with families to get the best out of them. For children in every part of Kirklees, we will refresh our Kirklees Futures strategy and make sure our education system meets the need of our population. In adult social care and health, we will continue to work on prevention for physical and mental health, and we'll work with our health partners and the private sector to make sure our care markets deliver quality within equality and diversity framework, to make sure everybody actually benefits from what we are doing. Safety and security is a key requirement for a good quality of life. We will work with communities and partners to make our neighbourhoods safer. For our economy, we're moving into delivery mode for one of the most ambitious regeneration programmes Kirklees has ever seen. But it's not just about the major projects, it's also about getting the basics right. That tenants get a first-class service through our homes and neighbourhoods teams, and we provide homes that are safe, secure, warm and wind and weather tight. Delivering on our road maintenance programme is much valued, and that is something that we will continue to look at and deliver. We need to upgrade our transport strategy so we can compete at a regional and national level. Our priority is about remembering the bigger picture too, staying true to our values. Continue to make sure our services, our buildings, our assets and our people support those most at risk from the cost of living crisis, which I feel is going to get worse. After all, economic crises are always worse for the people who are most in need and who can least afford to get along. And we need to remember our wider responsibilities too. So we will launch a new environment strategy and delivering on the climate emergency and action plan. It's about nurturing our heritage, developing our tourism base, and making sure our cultural diversity is actually enshrined in everything we do, and we create that new strategic direction that everybody feels included in what we are doing. We've got very little choice. In fact, we've got no choice in a lot of the things we do. But to achieve some of this in the most difficult financial circumstances will be a big, big challenge. And I hope that we can all get behind something that we can share under a common purpose. Through tough choices, transformation and using our assets efficiently, we will build a sustainable budget platform, which is a key to unlocking all those priorities. We've shown tonight that we have a vision. We might have different opinions and views, but I think we all know that we've got to do the best we can for our residents out there. We've demonstrated that we've got a plan. We've demonstrated that we can come back. We've done it in the past. Let's do it again in the future. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Part A is now complete, so we'll move to Part B. Oral questions, comments to Cabinet members on their portfolios on Cabinet minutes. Are there any questions, comments to the Leader of the Council or Cabinet members? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These comments and questions are to the Leader of the Council. I wish to raise a very serious matter of public interest, and this is to do with Councillor Pandor's response to the conviction of Councillor Lunat. I'm sure we're all aware of the situation. For those at home, Councillor Lunat, the Labour member, was convicted of perverting the course of justice and was sentenced last Thursday to 14 weeks in custody. I wrote an open letter to Councillor Pandor on Saturday, asking, among other things, when he first knew about the criminal investigation. He hasn't replied to my letter, but he has told reporters that he knew on the 28th of February and immediately suspended Councillor Lunat. My first questions are, can he produce any evidence that he did this? And why didn't he inform the Chief Executive of this suspension?
Thank you, Councillor David Hall, for your question. Mr. Mayor, before I answer that question, I'd just like to ask permission from you that I will answer the question that Councillor David Hall has posed. And we just need to be mindful we are still in the middle of a due process. After my statement, through your permission, Mr. Mayor, I will have nothing further to add. So if there are any questions, again, with your permission, I hope my statement is sufficient at this moment in time. And this is my statement, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Hall said, I was informed of the case on the 28th of February 2023. I immediately contacted the Labour Party, who suspended Councillor Lunat forthright. Councillor Lunat was also immediately suspended from the Labour group and had the whip removed. She has not attended any Labour group meetings as per her suspension, of which she is not currently a member. Following the judgment against Councillor Lunat, the Labour Party nationally is taking action. I can't comment on an ongoing issue which is of due process and it's within the legal framework still in terms of appeals. However, I wish to state on record, Mr. Mayor, that I am keen to state that the Labour Party will not condone, will not accept any behaviour that makes any of us be in a position where we lose public confidence. So I'd like to assure you that Labour Party is doing everything it needs to do, and I'd like to leave the matter there, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. I'm happy to accept your request that you have nothing further to add to the statement, and that is the end of the matter as far as questions for holding the Executive to account is for this evening. Okay?
My supplementary, please, Mr. Mayor.
Not if it's in relation to this. Councillor Pandor has said, if I may, Councillor Pandor has stated clearly that he's not going to make any further comments, so any questions wouldn't be useful at this time.
I think should disallow my further question entitled to a supplementary.
By all means.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Pandor's reply is not sufficient, I'm afraid. If you look at the Kirklees website today, Councillor Lunat is on there as a Labour member. Was his group aware on the 28th of February or soon after that Councillor Pandor had suspended Councillor Lunat? I wonder if you'd like to put your hands up, Labour members, if you were aware that Councillor Pandor had suspended Councillor Lunat on the 28th of February? Right, Labour members were not aware, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is that the end of your question or comment?
No, it isn't, Mr. Mayor. No, it isn't.
Well, we'll move you on if you insist on trying to antagonise the leader.
I'm not trying to antagonise anyone, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the leader has kept that secret. He should have informed committee services and the chief executive that that member has been suspended from the Labour group. The council, at the annual meeting, which was only 6 weeks ago, approved committee ratios in accordance with legislation, given that we were told by the Labour Party that there were 39 members of the Labour group on this council. The leader knew that was not the case, according to what he said now, and he therefore deliberately withheld information at the annual meeting which we should have had, and willfully so. I would like him, please, to provide evidence, as I've asked, that that member was suspended when he says she was. I would like him to consider his position as leader of this council. If he withholds information from his own group and withholds information from this council which is required by legislation, then he has willingly misled members of this chamber and he must resign.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I just remind members that I have agreed with the leader's request that any further questions on this won't be answered, so it's pointless. So if you've got questions, please make sure they're not related to that issue. Councillor Thompson.
My question or questions are to Councillor Scott, reference to housing. In the manner in which you've discussed tonight reference to saving money and using funds wisely, my first question is, I just wondered why we'd spent £158,000 on new uniforms and rebadging vans when the housing department came back in-house, when it could have waited until they were necessary. And another question from that reference to housing, I wondered if you could answer why the number of complaints in housing has doubled in the last 12 months since it came in-house.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Thompson. I'll take them in reverse order. So regarding the complaints, why they have doubled. We have a crisis with mould, damp, condensation, and we've had a tragic death of that young person. So complaints have escalated. We're on top of it. We're dealing with it at the moment. I'm happy to sit down and show you the plans and the risks. But we've got compliance issues as well that we have to address. So complaints will be to do with compliance, different little things. So that whole area has changed. So I'll leave it there, but I'm happy to sit with you or bring a presentation to council to talk about this so that you can see the plans for housing. Bringing it back in-house was the right thing to do, I do believe. And the money spent on livery for vans and uniforms and different things is the right thing to do. It was identifying with the council, and a lot of the stock was due to be changed anyway. So that 158,000, it's an idea for a council. I'm proud of that, that we acknowledge that our workforce have the right uniforms, the right equipment, and it will have logos on. So yes, we have to be out there. People know who our services are, rather than you don't know if there's a stranger at your door.
Councillor Thompson, supplementary.
Yeah. Just a point on the mould and damp. It was interesting to listen to senior officers within housing reference to over-insulating properties. It seems that the green issues within the housing stock and the well-being of the residents seem to be a little bit of a conflict. Because what I am told by senior officers here, that over-insulating a property actually causes more damp and possible mould, and just wondered if councillor was aware of this and that there were some actions to be taken on not over-insulating properties. Thank you, Chair.
For that, Councillor Thompson. I wasn't aware of that, so being the portfolio holder, it should have been in my brief. So if they're briefing you, they should be briefing me. So I'll immediately go away and take that away and find out about the over-insulating. Now, there is things that where we're having the problem with condensation, which I've said. We will be addressing that matter. They are part of the complaints procedure that we're going through. But as I said, I'm going to find out. I'd like to know what briefing and when you had that, because it's a priority. It should have come to the portfolio holder as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Mr. Mayor. The West Yorkshire Combined Authority takes decisions that affect over 2 million people. However, levels of engagement with public consultations remain stubbornly and depressingly low to negligible. There's another example of this on the report on page 15. Why does Councillor Pandor think that this is a recurring theme for West Yorkshire Combined Authority? What does he think can be done about it, and will he take this up with the Mayor?
Thank you, Councillor Smith, for your question. I will take it with the Mayor, and I'd be happy to sit down with you and look at the detail in terms of any specifics you've got, but I will definitely take it with the Mayor.
Thank you. I think it's an issue that goes right to the heart of our democracy and how our democratic institutions engage with the people they represent. So I'll be very happy to take you up on that offer. Thank you.
On that, in terms of the devolution model is as it is, and I've got my own views in terms of how devolution elected mayor could work better. An example is like the Regional Assembly, where you have the London mayor and then you have Regional Assembly members who are actually elected, which actually opens up that democracy. But that is not a model that we could actually, we had no choice in that model. But I'll take that up with you and I'm happy to talk to you afterwards.
Thank you. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions, if that's okay.
Part A and B, maybe. Or else you'll have to put your name down to ask another one.
Can you put my name down again? Thank you. So this is in relation to the Cabinet minutes from the 14th of March, page 200 in tonight's documents, and it's item 169, which is the asset rationalisation savings. So my question in respect of this is, in terms of the report, I don't have a problem with that. What I do have is what's not in the report. So, for example, we have a building in the centre of Holmfirth where the Tourist Information Office used to be, where Electoral Services used to be, and where the Parish Council used to be. And I have lost track of how many years ago it was now. We were moved out, and the Parish Council moved down the road, and that building has been pretty much unoccupied since then. It's right in the centre of Holmfirth. It's got a proper capital value, and this council has been spending money maintaining it, whilst actually it's not been doing anything. Worse, it's actually perhaps holding back some of the redevelopment opportunity for Holmfirth. We've got other examples of this. We've got the Lodge House in Meltham. It used to be a Homes and Neighbourhoods property. The family were moved out 5 or 6 years ago. It is a listed building. It doesn't really fit well within the H&M portfolio, but it's been left to decay. It's a perfectly good home. In fact, if it was privately owned, I might be tempted to ask the council to introduce one of the orders to take control of the property to make it a habitable home. The last time I drove past Ravensnell Park, the Lodge House there was all boarded up. At one point, it was a perfectly habitable home. Now not. We've got a whole estate of properties where there is no long-term purpose for them. And I would say, sell them or find a purpose for them. Sell them, give them away to any public body that can make proper use of them. But let's not sit on them, because it costs money to just sit on them, and it holds back redevelopment opportunities. And there is real funding pressures, and we've heard this about Cleckheaton Town Hall, about the funding pressures. But actually, if we release the capital from these buildings that we don't want and we don't have a purpose for, we could use that to help fund the repairs and maintenance to the buildings that we do want. And I would just really like to know what the plan is for all of those redundant buildings. When are we going to dispose of them?
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Councillor Davis.
Thanks for the point. We got the question, I know, at the end, but it's a really important point that you raise, and I'm not begrudging that whatsoever. One property I can absolutely tell you the detail on, and that's clearly in my ward, is the Holmfirth Council offices. Yeah, that's absolutely signed off for disposal, and that's being worked through the normal processes. There was a recent cabinet meeting, and unfortunately, with so many meetings, I can't remember the date of that, but I'm sure we can get you the minutes. And which, as a cabinet, we've signed off a whole list of assets that we need to look at for disposal or mothballing. So you're absolutely right to raise this point. It is being worked through at the moment, and certainly the intention is to look at what our, to develop a core that we can continue to support and develop and provide services to our residents. And then, as you put it, other assets which are now peripheral, and we see that we can dispose of. We'll be looking to get capital receipts. We'll be clearly looking to reduce our revenue costs in terms of corporate landlord. So I can assure you those plans are being worked on, and they're an essential part of the cost savings. So again, as I said, there will be details in the particular cabinet meeting minutes, but I honestly can't remember the date, Councillor Greaves, but we can find that for you, no problem. Okay.
Supplementary, Councillor Greaves?
Well, just one. I think I raised this perhaps 6 or 7 years ago. So better late than never, but some of these buildings, we ought to have dealt with them 5 years ago. The savings would have been substantial, and there would now be something else. But I'm glad to hear that it is being picked up.
It is. And if I use the example of Holmfirth, I'm sorry, being parochial, but you know, it's my ward, I really do hope, again, that when that goes to the market, that we have somebody who purchases that will develop it for the benefit of the town. I know that a local community land trust, Eco Homes, are interested and are already putting together possible bids for funds to do that, but there'll obviously be other developers as well. But it would be great, really, to have something like Eco Homes take that forward, because they would develop affordable homes and maybe even a mix of sort of work and homes as well. So yeah, your point's well made, and I think is you know, thank you for raising it here to make people aware as well. Thanks.
Councillor Cooper.
A question about parking enforcement. So I guess that's Councillor Mather, right? Is that your portfolio, parking? Okay. So I'm aware of a business in Huddersfield which parks with impunity, a private business, 40-odd vans every day, and is completely ignored by the parking people. And I'm just wondering, Councillor Mather, whether you think that that's right. Should they get away with it?
Thank you, Councillor Cooper, for your question, and I think I know which business you're talking about. And currently, we have spoken about this. Currently, they are carrying out works right in the centre of our town, and they need the vans for equipment and to move around the works they're doing. So as soon as the works have been completed, those vans will go to their respective places.
Councillor Cooper, just like the BBC presenter, are we in a position to name this business, or is it too soon?
We are, and I'm surprised actually, because it wasn't the business Councillor Mather was talking about. I was referring to the Royal Mail, which is actually a private business that makes money, and it seems to every morning they park on our roads, and the parking people go past them, and they don't put a ticket on them. And it's been estimated, other private businesses in the area think, just a minute, we can't do that. How come we can get away with it? How come we've not, just due to custom and practice, how can we get tickets on our vans? And it's been estimated that the cost for an hour a day for that comes to 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, £327,600. That's not coming into the council coffers from this private business which acts with impunity. Now, I'm not suggesting that we go and ticket all the Royal Mail vans, but I think at least we should go and have a conversation with Royal Mail about this and say, actually, we'd like to come to an agreement with you about parking and have an agreed figure for doing that. Otherwise, other businesses which look at this and think, what's different about them? They're a private sector business. They're not public sector. Would we do this for Amazon vans? You know, what's the difference?
There is no difference, and thank you for bringing it to my attention. I'm sure our officers have been in touch, and I will go back and ask those questions and come back. Thank you for doing the maths for me, and I'll get back to you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
BBC presenter. I actually thought it was the police they were talking about, because there was a problem in the town centre with the police. But anyway, my question is for Councillor Scott with her democracy portfolio. And I don't want to get into the debate about Councillor Luna, but it's come out tonight that when the ratios were done at the annual general meeting, they were done incorrectly, because Councillor Lunat was not a member of the Labour group, but was treated as a member of the Labour group when those ratios were calculated. So I just wonder if I can ask Councillor Scott what action can be taken to rectify that and make sure that the ratios are correct. Because clearly, if they weren't, if wrong information was provided to officers, officers have acted in good faith. We can't change the past, and I don't want to get into that debate. But we can at least make sure we get it right now. And I just wonder if, with her democracy hat on, if she'd be willing to, you know, say that we'll take the actions that are necessary to correct whatever is wrong. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Taylor. The specifics of the councillor that you mentioned, I think Councillor Pandor has said all that we can say on it. And what I will do is talk with Chief Exec and the legal officers and look into what you have said. But can I assure this chamber at no time were we misleading anybody?
Thank you, Councillor Scott. I will hand over to legal.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so my understanding of the position in relation to Councillor Lunat from the proportionality point of view is that she was suspended, but it was an administrative suspension is how it was described to me, and she was still subject to the whip. So she wasn't an independent. She was still a member of the Labour Party, although there was an administrative suspension. So technically, I think the calculations were still correct. She wouldn't have been treated as an independent at that point in time.
Supplementary, Councillor Taylor?
That doesn't tally with what the limited amount that we have been told this evening by Councillor Pandor, because he said the whip had been withdrawn. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know, and I don't think we should perhaps debate it here, but I think there probably is more work that needs to be done to just, probably not in this meeting because it's the wrong place, but I think we do need to get to the bottom of it because it's about our democracy and it needs to be right.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Pandor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, she had an administrative suspension, so she was still a member of the Labour group and Labour Party, but now that we have found her judgment to her prosecution, I don't want to comment any further. The Labour Party is taking action, and that's all I can say, but she was under administrative suspension and she was still a member of the Labour group and the Labour Party.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under Council Procedure Rules, responses can be delegated, and I'd invite the Leader or Cabinet Member to delegate to Councillor Crook as Lead Member for Standards. The Nolan Principles set out integrity, accountability, openness and leadership. Has that been shown tonight in response to these questions? I would also ask that a reference again to the Chief Exec or the Leader. Can something be described as sub judice when a Crown Court has passed sentence? A person is free to appeal, but as far as the court procedures are concerned, the matter is at that time closed and therefore is not sub judice, as the name implies. And again, in delegating to Councillor Crook, as a member of the Standards Committee, we are told to consider how a member of the public in possession of the facts would view the incident. Having just been told that the councillor was still technically a member of the Labour group, we're not talking about the Labour Party, what we're talking about is the Labour group on Kirklees, how would a member of the public view the incident?
Can I just, Councillor Balls, Councillor, there'll be no supplementary. Can I just remind members that these questions or comments are to the Leader of the Council or Cabinet members? Okay, but the questions are for Leader or Cabinet members. Councillor McGrath. Councillor Pandor provided a statement and he would like you to refer to them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe this is a question for Councillor Davis regarding the stadium, but I'm happy to be corrected. On the back of the comments made on pages 175, 176, 181 and 182 of the agenda, along with the drawdown of 2.7 million from specific risk reserves to fund the creation of a bad debt provision, I'm going to ask a question regarding the state of the stadium in terms of where the council sits on the 40%. So since our last meeting, an American businessman by the name of Kevin Nagle has bought Huddersfield Town Football Club, and number 6 in his 7-point plan for the club was the potential control of the stadium and the development of land around the stadium. In 2021, the council said the existing ownership model was failing and the company was at risk of administration. With the failure of the HD1 project and the continued uncertainty regarding the future of CAL at its present and its presence at the stadium, can the council update us on the debts and the reported 9 million maintenance backlog of the stadium, along with the plans to make sure we have a stadium at the end of our station to a stadium gateway when it's finally achieved? And has Mr Nagle been contacted about the potential purchase of the stadium since taking control?
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thanks for the question. Yep, I have two roles. This just so people understand. I'm a director on the board, KSDL. I'm council representative and obviously portfolio holder as well, which is always interesting in terms of how we manage that. But I think we've managed it quite successfully. In terms of details of any negotiations and discussions with the football club and the rugby club, that is clearly something I couldn't share here, and particularly as a board director, I'm not involved in those details. The shareholders are involved with that. So we have representatives in terms of officers who deal with that. Certainly as a council, we're absolutely working alongside both clubs to ensure there is a future for the stadium. It's something which we recognise the importance of. We value the importance of the stadium, and I believe, certainly from what I've viewed as a director of the board, we have a very good chief exec and team who are continuing to drive forward that stadium under really difficult circumstances because, as you can imagine, the stadium's experiencing the same problems as everybody else, particularly around energy and inflation. So at this stage, that's all I would say. Certainly, you've seen the figures that are public, and we will, when it's appropriate, we will absolutely ensure that those figures in the future, if there are any numbers or figures that we can share, we will do that. But I think you will probably understand there are certain discussions which are commercially sensitive, and we wouldn't share at council at this stage. But very happy, again, if you wanted to sit down to go through any detail, and certainly as a board director, I'm there to represent the board, but also to give a view from the council in that respect. But our first priority, along with Bernard and ex-councillor Ken Sims, our first priority are to make sure that that board is working effectively and that there is a sustainable future for the stadium. And as directors, we have a responsibility for ensuring that. So that's what we're doing at this present moment.
Thank you. Supplementary? Thank you. Councillor Greaves?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important to crack this nut, and so this is one for Councillor Turner, and it's in respect of school section 106 education contributions. So we heard from him earlier tonight, correctly, that the money can only be used for capital, and it can only be used for capital purposes. All schools have a revenue issue, but all schools also have a capital problem as well. So, whilst the money is paid because the new housing is going to create more demand for school places, there isn't a restriction that only says the money can be used to create additional spaces. I'd just like to read something from the Kirklees document. Before I do that, I should say I've just had a message from perhaps the one person who is watching us on the live webcast, Councillor Richard Noon, the Mayor of Meltham, and he special mention for the examiner to just say thank you for the vote from examiner readers for making Meltham the best place to live in Kirklees, with over 34% of the vote.
Was that your comment, or do you wish to have further?
No, sorry. Find it. So, from the Kirklees Section 106 contributions document, types of educational facilities for which provision may be sought. Sites and construction costs for new schools, number one. Number two, contributions towards the provision of additional classrooms and related facilities at existing schools. For example, toilets, cloakrooms, ancillary facilities. We've also had confirmation, number three, contributions towards extending related external provisions, which would include hard play, grassed areas and sports pitches. We've had confirmation that that would include outdoor learning facilities, that would include play areas. And item number four, and this is perhaps the poorest use for them, a contribution towards meeting the highways needs from the additional children, such as additional parking provision for staff. Now, personally, I don't particularly see that as a priority, but I do see facilities for children in these schools as a priority. All our schools are full to bursting. We get lots of people coming in from other areas, and more than welcome to do so. But we need this money. What's the plan of the council? Because it's sitting on this money and it's sat on it for a fair old time. If this cabinet does not understand how Section 106 education contributions work, please speak to the planning team. Speak to Matthias, speak to Edward. They will take you through it. You can speak to Julie as well, because she'll be able to take you through exactly how the money can be used. My question is this. Are you going to release that money to the schools that are legally entitled to it, or are you going to wait for developers to claw all that money back? Because there's £1.7 million sat in the tub now. There's as much and more to come in the next few years. But the first developer that understands that they're going to be able to claw this money back, I can't imagine the fallout that there will be. And I'm just asking you, understand what the rules are, understand how it can be used, read the clauses within those individual legal agreements. Read the ones for the Meltham schools, read the one for Holney School, read the one for Brockholes. It clearly states how that money can be used. If you've got any doubt at all, speak to the planning team. They can take you through that. Okay? There's lots of documentation out there. For the life of me, I can't understand what the resistance with it is. You can't use this money elsewhere. You can only use it at the named schools or give it back to developers. So what's the plan? You're going to give it back to developers just to what? Because you don't think our schools warrant it? They do.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you very much for the question. We've covered most of this earlier on. Your statement that schools are full to bursting is factually incorrect. If you look on page 129 of the School Planning Places document, you will see that the numbers are declining across your ward. So they're not full to bursting. There is capacity within those schools. I have a spreadsheet with all the relevant payments. If you want to contact me afterwards, I will give you the exact details of what the Section 106 agreement says. It's really tiny, so I can't really read it very accurately. But in this document, it tells us exactly what it can be spent off for each school. And as I said earlier, no school is going to thank us when they're already probably running a budget deficit for sticking a building on that they don't need. And where are we going to get the funding from to top it up? Because the money from Section 106 doesn't buy a classroom, it buys part of a classroom. So you want us to buy or build classrooms that we don't need to put extra costs on schools in a time of crisis, financial crisis. That doesn't make sense. That actually doesn't make sense. When numbers rise in future years, if they rise, then we can look at it. But there's no point building something now that nobody needs. We'll have that money when the need is there, but it's not there at the moment.
Supplementary?
Yeah, please. So there's 2 points on this. One is that you can't wait forever and a day. The money times out, okay? And within the legal agreement, the developer can claw it back. Number 2, you keep talking about building new school classrooms. That's the first heading. The other 3 headings apply. So if you don't need new school classrooms, you can improve the facilities that you've got. So this could be improving the IT provision, improving the library. This could be improving the play space, all of which would take money from the school's budget. Now, if the school can save money, if the school can fund some of this well-needed work through using the school education 106 contributions, that saves it from having to find that money elsewhere. And sometimes that money is found elsewhere by putting revenue money to one side to build up. That revenue money can be used for other purposes. It would be great if actually schools could spend this money on exactly what they thought was important, but that's not down to us. That's down to the rules set by national government. And the new proposals for the school payments that might come to us won't change that. But if this money isn't released to the schools, the developers can claim it back. And I think everybody who sits on planning would be bemused to understand that when we have these major developments and we identify Section 106 contributions, that money is not getting used for the purpose it was put there for. Or we get ever more housing development. The Section 106 contributions, well, that's the silver lining to the cloud of ever more development. But it's no help if you won't release the money. So, again, and I guess I'm going to be repeating this ad nauseum, but the money needs to be released, or do you plan to give it back to developers?
Yeah, there is no evidence in the last 20 years that any developers claim the money back. And again, I'll reiterate, what do you want us to build that you need? Because the evidence is there that we do not need to improve or build extra capacity in those schools. Plus the fact, as I said, that Section 106 money will go nowhere near building anything new, improving facilities, because it'll need to be topped up by some money from somewhere else. Where's that money going to come from? And as I said earlier, if you start tagging, when the time is right, when the population of school children start to rise, that's the time to invest. Not now when the numbers are declining. Yes, we're building new houses. That doesn't necessarily mean more children. It means people living in different areas. It does not necessarily mean more children. We'll have to wait and see whether those developments bring children in the future. But at this moment in time, as I say, look at the school place planning. Your schools' numbers are actually declining. Why invest in a project that we don't actually need at the moment when we may need it in the future? When times may even be tougher, who knows? So that money will sit there. Should it be needed, it will be spent at the right time, but not yet.
Thank you. Councillor Lawson.
I believe this is a question for Councillor Ahmed. On Cabinet Act February 14th, 2023, I asked Councillor Mather I recently met with residents at Oakenshaw regarding the cross that has been removed for repair. When will residents see action being taken on the replacement of the cross? There was a response given, which was the money isn't there. I will keep on coming back to this space and to Cabinet and asking the same question until I get a different answer. Oakenshaw is very cross. It will not take no for an answer. Can we ask when there will be some action about Oakenshaw Cross? And has there been a briefing to the current Cabinet member?
Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. As I mentioned to you at the Cabinet meeting, a meeting was taking place with the MP Kim Leadbitter and the members of the Oakenshaw Group. That meeting has taken place. An officer has been and discussed with them regarding the Oakenshaw Cross. And I did say to you in a recent email that I will get back to you with a response once the officer has met the group, and I will chase that up this week. And the only meeting took place a week and a bit ago.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Local councillors were unable to make that meeting, and the meeting was not able to be rescheduled. We do not have the information from that meeting, nor has it been provided to us. I think what I would ask of you is, will you make this a priority of yours, and could we have some reasonable numbers rather than figures put out of the air at about how much it would cost to repair?
Once I've got a briefing from the officer and the good discussions is had with the MP, I will come back to you with that.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe this is for Councillor Turner. I have an email from a resident this evening with regards to the Council's affordable housing criteria on planning applications. The resident finds it unbelievable that the Council are wanting 2, preferably 3 years, certified accounts to be accepted onto the affordable housing scheme. Banks do not even require that for a mortgage. Each case should be dealt with on its merit. In this case, the residence is slightly different. They've lived outside the UK for a time and had Spanish accounts and SA 302s, which verify the income and acceptability. Kirklees are now saying that this person must get certified accounts or a letter from an accountant. They spoke to a firm of accountants on Monday who clarified that if the resident hadn't submitted the figures themselves through the accountant to the HMRC, the accountant would not be able to certify any accounts subsequently. Therefore, they will not satisfy the Kirklees Council criteria for affordable housing. Can we look at this? And again, reflecting back to earlier things, would you take a walk with me and meet the Murfield resident? Because we've heard from other councillors about clawback. Affordable housing has a clawback feature that if a developer has advertised affordable housing and it has not been sold for a period of 3 months, they can release it to the open market. If we're getting self-employed people who are now allowed to self-certify for HMRC that are getting barriers put in the way by Kirklees, how are people supposed to get on the affordable housing ladder?
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Just walking.
Councillor Bolt, thank you. That is an operational issue. I am not aware of the process of what qualifies for affordable homes and how that is reached through the various tax regimes, etc. But if you send me that email, I'll gladly have a word with planning officers and find out exactly what the process is for those people who are self-employed. A roundabout walk around Murfield now. I'll give it a miss if you don't mind.
Supplementary?
Sticking to the issue of planning then, and again we've reflected on section 106, and you've said that you're not aware that developers have clawed any money back. On a similar vein, a section 106 in Murfield with £80,000 should have gone to Hopton School, was lost because this council failed to collect it. The first payment should have been due on occupation of the first dwelling and the other 50% when half of the dwellings were occupied. Kirklees failed to collect any. The developer later claimed they got into receivership. In those circumstances, shouldn't the loss of funding to a local school be made good by the service?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wouldn't sit down, Graham. Apologies. It's all called active travel. Again, it is a question on a theme about Section 106, but I don't want to go into detail about particular schemes or particular housing. But I think probably what you'll get a sense of today is perhaps our current processes around Section 106 aren't fit for purpose. And my question is, would he commit to undertaking a review of Section 106? Because I think all of us members have experience of frustration with monies being collected from developers and, you know, residents thinking it's their money and they can spend it. And perhaps there may be, we could, you know, do something cross-party even to try and find a better way of using the funding and a better way of perhaps collecting it. So it's a generous offer, really, that perhaps is something we should look at.
You'll be aware that the local plan is nearly 5 years old. I'm in constant discussions with officers about what we do, because we have to review that shortly. I'll give you a quote. The 106 process is being reformed to ensure that new development is matched by new infrastructure, because the current system sees far too little of the developer's profits going to build new schools, hospitals or transport infrastructure. It's also too slow and plagued by uncertainties. That was the Prime Minister a fortnight ago. He recognises it's broken, we recognise it's broken, but is it because it's primary legislation, it needs to go through the planning reforms, which, as we all know and have discussed many times, moves slower than the average sloth through Parliament. We desperately need those planning reforms and changes to come in so that we can review the 106, because you're right, it doesn't work in its present form and it is broken. And I agree, and it's probably one of the few times you'll ever get me agreeing with the Prime Minister, but he's absolutely right.
Supplementary, Councillor Taylor?
Well, I would say we had the opportunity at one point when the local plan was going through to move to a community infrastructure levy, but the council chose not to take that up. So it has had an opportunity to change things. I don't particularly expect a detailed explanation, Graham. I think we just need to move forward and work together to find a better solution for our residents.
Yeah, we're about to embark on the process for the review of the local plan, which everybody will be able to feed into, don't forget, residents as well.
Thank you. There are no further questions. We move on to item 15, page 217. The minutes of meetings of committees as included in the council agenda at item 15 are here for information. Item 16, questions, comments to chairs of committees, subcommittees, panels on matters within their terms of reference, including questions, comments on the minutes at item 15. Any member may ask a question of a chair or spokesperson, followed by one supplementary. Are there any questions or comments to the chairs of committees or panels or nominated spokespersons? Councillor Bolt. I'm closing the list after this.
Thank you for your consideration, Mr Mayor. Councillor Lawson has already referred to questions that were asked at Cabinet on the 14th of February. So picking up on that, can I ask the nominated spokesman for Kirklees Active Leisure, Councillor Sokol, at that meeting and at other council meetings, the point of having a spokesman from Kirklees Active Leisure who can't actually speak was raised and we said it would be looked at. Does Councillor Sokol still think he serves a valid purpose as a spokesman for an organisation on which he can't speak?
Councillor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. a new council board will ask this question again, because he usually asks every council meeting. I think a week ago, we had a meeting with the chief executive of the call, which meeting was arranged by head of the governance staff, Samantha Lawton, and Councillor Mark Thompson as well as myself, to review the role of the spokesperson and the other member of the committee. So, your case. So, we had a good meeting with them, but the issue is, chief executive also still say, because the college is charitable trust and there are charitable trust rules, we have to follow the rules. So if we are still saying, I wanted to answer the question if you ask, but I'm not allowed under the rules of the charitable trust. So if you need further information, you can speak to, after the meeting, to Samantha Lawson, the head of the services. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The point of the question was not at that time asking for a response about any operational matters. It was asking whether the purpose of having a spokesman who couldn't speak was valid. But the supplementary is I had information that closures of sports centres by CAL was changed from their original proposal following feedback from Kirklees Council, in which case, were the closure of sports centres a political decision or an operational decision?
Well, I think, again, this is a question, again, we come to the same situation. I'm not allowed, or member of the cabinet, Paul Davis, who is the portfolio, he can answer your question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sokal. With that in mind and with 2 minutes to go, I would like to thank you for your attendance, your contributions and your understanding with some difficult issues this evening. Thank you for your time and good night.